Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Bubble Man's World. Welcome to another episode of Hash Church, episode 157. Just 1 week after our 3-year anniversary. Some may say that today is the 3-year anniversary, and if you would like to celebrate it as such, by all means, please do. In the meantime, I'm going to send out some links to our panelists, or at least to this week's panelists. And we'll see how that goes. We've got a good old chat room happening right now. A couple of, 105, 107 people watching, and 148. Wow, the number's jumping quick. I'm just going to put my headphones in, as I'm probably going to be causing some sort of a feedback loop, as I always do. Let's just make sure that I'm getting the right links out to everyone so that they all have the right link to click. I see Etienne's already seen it. Let's see if he's going to come in and make his way.
Good morning, sir.
There he is. Dude, you were missed for the 3-year anniversary, let me tell you.
Oh, I'm sorry, bud. I was in New Orleans, so it was impossible to really do anything.
Oh, that's awesome, dude. It was nice that you got out.
It was a nice 3 years, so congratulations as well. Needless to say, on a great 3 years.
Wow, wasting no time. Etienne is already in on the fire. Check this out.
Ooh, nice squish, sir. What is that pretty thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, this here is the Seedsman Haze.
I like it already.
Right?
What temp was that pressed at?
That was pressed around 200 degrees on the Sasquatch M1.
Wow, very nice squish.
Oh, yeah.
What temp?
200 degrees, just around 200 degrees. I remember it was a little bit higher, and we dropped the temp, but yeah, it did that dual butter and also a nice drip there as well. I took some macro photographs earlier, so I figured it might be the way to go about it.
Sweet. Well, I got my Bubble Man vaporizer, fortunately, before my trip, and was able to use it on my trip, which was very helpful. So kudos on your latest accomplishment, needless to say.
Yeah, dude, I'm glad that you got one. That put a smile on my face to see that you had one. I saw that Forrest also posted one the other day. I'm like, right on. Tony's he's getting them out to all the right people, you know?
Yeah. It's I was impressed. I was also able, because I ran out a little bit on my trip, so I was able to put my own wax in there. So,
oh yeah?
Yeah, as opposed to the rosin. So I had to learn a little learning curve with that, because the BHO, when it's heated, tends to expand. So you have to make sure that the lid's on it, et cetera, et cetera. So when it finally did, it cooked down, but it definitely, it worked.
All right, so this is for Ontario. He's asking me to show dry sift and bubble. So here you go, Ontario. There you go. 3 different grades of dry sift separated out from one full melt bubble hash in the bottom of the jar. And we'll be looking forward to Ontario Hashish posting his dry sift and bubble that he's going to be showing us in the Facebook room later today. We'll look forward to seeing that, Monsieur Ontario Hashish. And in the meantime, why don't we smoke some hashish? Well, now that we're doing picture time and sharing, I think Etienne's already like 5 bowls in, and I need to join the party.
Get in here, buddy.
And I don't know what's going on with the rest of our crew. Maybe today it's you and I.
C'est la vie.
Say la vie. Hey, I'm happy, dude. I'll do a whole hash church with you today, Etienne. Not a problem.
No, it's not like we don't have anything to talk about.
Oh my God, I know. Between you and me, I think that we'll probably be able to find enough to discuss.
Yeah, needless to say. Yeah, a lot of things are happening here in California. The new regulations, still kind of digesting those. But the governor signed the AB 133 the other day, which allows for co-locations, amongst other things. It's kind of an emergency situation that has transpired, because it's not like the state of California was dragging its feet. It's just that time is getting away from them, and that January 1st they want to be able to issue permits. So local municipalities are still racing to get people into their systems, and local people are trying to get into their local systems or get their local municipalities to change laws. So we're still in that neophyte phase as opposed to watching all the exciting things happening up in Canada. We're still so draconian and still in the individual state status as opposed to the interprovince love that you guys have.
Well, but we got a nightmare of a scene in a way too, because there's this major division that still occurs in our federal and in our non-federal system. So, you know, once they figure it out and offer us everything we need, because obviously they're not offering us everything we need, therefore we have to continue with civil disobedience. If they're not going to allow, you know, all the extracts and all these different things, then people are forced to, you know, produce them and sell them through dispensaries and other means. So that's what Canada's continuing to do. And hopefully they'll figure out at one point how to get rid of this sort of prohibition problem in regards to trying to pass it over to a legal system. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, here in California, we very fortunately have Lori Ajax, who's the former head of the Alcohol Control Board. She's the one that's been assigned or the initial for the marijuana control. And we're very, very fortunate that they've been holding meetings all over the state and that they are open and listening to us. So we don't have to protest at the moment. We have to actually, you know, see that everything that we get, you know, there's still the issue of the 100 milligram limit on edibles and things like that, which are edibles allowed by the federal government there in Canada? Are you allowed to produce edibles, or is that just like flowers and extracts you're allowed to produce?
Well, like for my own personal, I can produce every type of extract. That's from the MMAR. That's from the court case that Owen Smith went through. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Michael's not seeing the panel today. Not sure. Oh, well, because there is no panel today. Right now, it's myself and Etienne. That's all. That's all there is. We are the panel today.
We are cooking it up early. Have your vaporizers ready.
Yeah, you know what? I haven't even hit a dab. So if you have something to say, let me mute my mic and heat this quart.
There you go. Nice. Got the banger that fits in. Oh, that's the adapter that fits in, right? Very nice. Very nice. I like that. It makes the mini so much better. But California is, you know, we're really pushing for proper regulations and pesticide testing, which of course is, we just had a major release by another one by Steep Hill saying that over 90% of the clones on the market are contaminated, which is, well, it shows that the market needs, for somebody who's watching, you know, they need to get on their game and start producing and get in the, you know, mother and clone game, because genetics are needed. And it's a major issue if you're perpetuating a problem and selling clones to people. I mean, I'm doing it right now because the suppliers that I have, I thought were clean, but it turns out that, you know, that's not necessarily always the case. And one of the difficult things about not being vertically integrated, because my city hasn't allowed for that vertical integration yet. So by not having a clean supply of clones or clean genetics to start with, as we've talked about multiple times, you're basically giving people a problem to start with out the door. And it's only a problem that they're going to find, because we found that these wonderful and growing environments that we recreate inside are the perfect environments for nature to thrive, and nature will find its way in different ways. So, you know, starting off with an automatic contaminant, be it something in the roots or something like white powdery mildew, etc., you're already behind the 8 ball, because as soon as you grow it, the problem is going to show itself, and you're going to think that it was your problem or something that you did in your room or in your environment that may have caused it. But in reality, it's starting off with the plant that you're bringing in and the perfect growing environment that you're setting for the plant. You're creating those perfect conditions, unfortunately, to host and, you know, deal with those situations. So I know Sam has talked about in the past, you know, when ways to get around this is to get solid genetics that are seeds and start from there if you're unable to find.
Well, not only that, but I would strongly suggest use varieties which are resistant to powdery mildew or whatever the specific problem is that you have. You'll find, a great difference in resistance between equatorial varieties and wide leaf varieties to powdery mildew, for example.
And it literally is what you start with can affect. So it's, and the ways that we have found this, at least myself, I've grown little areas with starter plants and then to see which ones get white powdery mildew or not, because of it's very prevalent here in the Bay Area. So it's easier to get white powdery mildew than most things. And so you can actually start to seed through and pull out those plants that are susceptible to white powdery mildew. And as you'll see, plants or equatorials tend to be have that natural defense, so that you can literally see a plant that's covered in white powdery mildew right next to another plant that has white powdery mildew, and so that doesn't have it. So that's how we go through that type of selection. If you don't have access to a good seed stock or a geneticist who knows that this in fact is what it says it's to be, because most
the real problem is that using anything with wide leaf drug varieties, genetics in it from Afghanistan or the Hindu Kush, that general area, there have no natural resistance for powdery mildew because the conditions there are not conducive to powdery mildew. Whereas equatorial varieties, they had to have a resistance.
Right, and so it's been biologically built into the plant through evolution.
They're the only ones. They're the ones that reproduced.
And the problem is that the most popular strains, like your cookies and your OG Kushes and things like that, tend to be from the upper mountain regions and tend to be wide leaf varieties and highly susceptible to white powdery mildew. And that's an issue because that's kind of come from the consumer because of consumer demand, but not necessarily from the growers. The growers' demands from where the growers are growing it. Because, I mean, as far as I know, white powdery mildew is a problem all over the United States and into North America. I'm not sure about.
It's a problem worldwide.
Exactly.
I mean, you don't see it very much in field crops in Afghanistan because it's dry there. And but in general, wherever there's big I'm sure there are some which do get powdery mildew even in Afghanistan.
Hey, welcome Dr. Mark and Skunk Man Sam as well to the room. It was just Etienne and myself for a few minutes there. It was kind of unique.
It was cool.
And now Wade is in the house with his smiley face. What's going on, Wade?
It's all good today. Beautiful sunny day. Garden is flourishing.
Nice.
Yeah.
I saw your photos with Forrest and the Swami. And I was like,
that was a fun visit.
That looked like a fun visit.
We got a little bit of rain on us. No, Swami's doing good. It was a real treat to see them. His plants are struggling. He's transitioning from working in pots to working in soil. And because he's so fervent about using no animal products, nitrogen is a real issue for his garden. So, we explored what possibilities there were to increase the nitrogen without adding any fish emulsion or any of the other things that a lot of folks use. And meantime, he's very meticulous about organic and all of that. But
what were some of the alternatives that you guys were talking about for producing nitrogen for his plants?
Green manures. He's not willing to use animal manures of any kind in compost, so it's really cover crops.
Yeah, that takes a while, Wade.
Exactly.
But, another thing that he could think of would be using the seed meal of high protein seeds, for example, hemp seeds, pressed it for oil. You could use that. That is fairly high in carbon, and I'm sure it's high in what you need.
And most importantly, Sam, I bet you it would put a smile on Swami's face.
Yes.
Yeah. As long as he didn't have to squash the billion seeds.
Right, yeah.
Is there a source for that, Sam, that you know of, that you could name?
In Canada, probably Marcus knows better than me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in the U.S., there really isn't anybody squishing yet. I'm listening. I've got some friends dealing things in Nebraska, etc., but they're more dealing in decorticators. There's
got to be an oil company producing oil in the U.S. and that's.
Well, you'd think like Nutiva or somebody like that would be somebody to reach out to. And Nutiva is California, so reach out to them and see what they're doing with their whole.
In Europe, what they do with the seed after they squash it is they make it into animal feed, really high in protein.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's high protein. Yeah, it's the animals love it too. I mean, they will gravitate toward it when they have different types of protein for some reason, and it's it's very good for them. It's digestible.
Hey, welcome to the room, Forrest.
Good morning, everybody.
Yeah.
I wanted to give thanks to Forrest once again. I think that hashtag that you started, Make Them Watch, and that whole mentality behind it and the words that you wrote prior to that hashtag, which I shared on my Facebook page, was that was powerful shit, man.
I have a unique perspective, and I just have nothing. I think a lot of the cannabis industry, and for good reason, this isn't a judgment, but they've had to just tiptoe around all these judgmental people, and all their reasons why the cannabis industry is bad and evil. And even in our own community, they're just, in my opinion, they're putting up with ridiculous regulation that they really don't have any choice because they've just been abused and mistreated for so many years. But see, I'm not in that circle. I don't have something to prove or to sell. So I have nothing to lose to call people out and really point out how they're these old ideologies that they can't point back to any reason why they even believe them other than they were told at some point they should, how they impact everybody, So yeah, that post was one of many that just, I feel is my role to just really put it in people's faces that we're at a point now where if you are going to hold on to old ideologies and outdated beliefs that put people's lives at risk and severely impact community members' quality of life, you shouldn't be protected in your little bubble and not have to see the damage that causes. So that's where the Make Them Watch hashtag came from. They should see what it looks like to watch a child slowly seize to death. They should see what it's like to suffer from conditions where your skin fall off. They should see what it's like for a cancer patient to go through chemotherapy with and without access to cannabis. I mean, the only way you can have these outdated, really, callous and heartless, to be blunt, positions is if you can shelter yourself from the impact that has on people around you. So I encourage families and patients out there who are suffering to film it and post it and tag it with the Make Them Watch so that they can see the real impact that cannabis prohibition has. So
yeah, and prior to that statement, you posted a photo of Silas May 20th, fairly heavy, not looking as healthy, on pharmaceuticals, back to September 17th, lost major weight, looks just so much more aware and healthy, and that's on cannabis. And you wrote, don't tell me that we as parents do not know what is and is not safe for our children. We have to live with the consequences of the pills we've given our child every day. 95% seizure free, 100% pharmaceutical free. So that was also very powerful. I wrote that and I wrote that to the people who are very consistent in there. Well, we need more proof. Where's the proof? We need more scientific documentation, etc. Well, like Forrest says in the last sentence of his statement here, and what you said, don't tell me that we as parents don't know what is safe and not safe. That predated the Make Them Watch, but I just thought both of them were crack right out of the ballpark.
Thank you.
That's where it all started, was with patients, because remember, it was the AIDS patients and people suffering here in the Bay Area that got so sick and tired of literally watching all their friends wasting away and dying that they were like, fuck you, fuck this, I'm going to break the fucking law. And if it was not for them, we would not be here.
You're right.
I agree. We've kind of gotten to a stagnation point, and I think what you're doing there for us is touting a whole other level, because we were able to open up that first wave. But at the same time, it's opened up a whole other wave of medicines to these very intricate, delicate illnesses that you're dealing with that are on the very rare side of the realities. They're not common things like depression or, unfortunately, AIDS and other things like that. They're so narrowly along a finite point that you've literally been ignored by everything from the pharmaceutical companies. You're trying doctors who are desperately trying to find any way to find any type, by their standards that they have access to,
discarded, even, Etienne. Discarded.
Absolutely. And so I think your awareness and your ability to raise awareness because of the difficulties that you face and the connection that those vulnerabilities have with the everyday person really becomes its own arrow point and spear in its own trajectory that I think will do nothing but help millions of people, and especially thousands of children with these rare conditions that can get some relief. And some relief is better than no relief, as you know, and even if it's temporary.
It's the same here in Vancouver. I just have to say that it really was this sort of the gay community who were the first to stand up and just be like, and it was a part of the gay community who was suffering with AIDS, and it was this wasting syndrome, and it was all of these different things that cannabis just seemed to be miraculous for, in how it was improving the quality of a life that was being decimated. If you hung around, in the beginning of the BC Compassion Club with Hillary, the majority of the people that she signed originally were terminally ill. It was really almost like palliative care she was offering, but they were also homeless. So they were, it was unbelievable. Like we should never forget that group of people and how they really were the front lines for, here on the West Coast, I think, pretty subsistently.
Everywhere. They were ostracized by everything and by everyone. Everybody didn't know how AIDS was. It wasn't until Princess Diana actually shook the hand of an AIDS patient in a hospital in like 1985 that people realized, oh, I'm not going to catch this way. But I mean, it was originally just dismissed as a gay disease. And because of that, gays were not necessarily looked proper upon by society as much as necessarily they are and respectfully are now. And they had to literally come out and fight for their freedoms. And then they pulled society, all of us together. And I got great respect for the gay community for their hard work, their dedication, and their networking. Fuck. They taught us in the cannabis community. We thought we knew networking. Shit, we had no idea how to network until we saw the gay community come out in the AIDS and the cannabis community, and they showed us how it's done, people. We thought we straights had it going on, et cetera, et cetera. No, we had no clue. Their networks before internet, et cetera, were a class that we all envied because of how able and how quickly they were able to organize and get it together. So much respect to all those pioneers and those survivors, and needless to say, much love and respect to all those who passed and those family members who had to suffer along the way.
Yeah, some of the most inspired activists I've worked with started, in Los Angeles and other areas with working with the gay community during the AIDS epidemic. And, the stories are just heartbreaking. And what's more is probably the wrong word, but what is also heartbreaking is the fact that community didn't rise up to support, just like you're saying. They shunned them. They had all this judgment towards homosexuality. And, you look back on that and people look back on it with shame, the people who have a good, moral compass, in my opinion. But we're just the humans. We just have to repeat this history, and we're at this point now where the word medicine and how it pertains to cannabis, the doors have been blown wide open. I mean, I had always thought, like, yeah, this is great. This is harmless. If it helps people get hungry, this is wonderful. There is absolutely no moral or ethical reason to prevent these people from eating it. But now we're on the cusp of slowly discovering, but rapidly in the terms of medical understanding, discovering that it is interacting with one of the most important regulatory systems in our body, and could hold the key to some of the most important medical discoveries we've seen in generations. And went from this is harmless and yeah, this can help, it's just the right thing to do, to this is without a doubt one of the greatest medical discoveries of our lifetime and has the potential to change the world. And anyone who's saying that the studies, there just needs to be more research, as soon as I hear that come out of my mouth, I know I'm talking to someone who has made little to no effort to look at the research that's available. Because at this point, the only way you can say there's no research or more needs to happen is that you've locked yourself in a bubble or are just repeating mantras that you've heard other people say and you're hoping that they're true. Because we have human clinical trials in this country. We have peer-reviewed papers coming out every other day at this point. You can't even keep up with the science that's coming out. So, it's just at this point, one of my main goals is that exact concept of people protecting themselves in this bubble by saying, well, we didn't really know, we didn't really understand. And one of the things I try to do every time I speak, or if I'm at a conference, or if I'm talking to anyone, is that when we're done talking, you're no longer going to get to say you didn't know. So you're going to know, and you're going to either act on it and look back and realize that you acted with pride and with, with a good moral compass. You're going to look back on it and realize that you put a lot of people in a really dangerous position that could cost a lot of people their lives for really no justifiable reason at all.
Well, I think the problem is that people are so easily manipulated and directed, and they're just and everyone. I'm not talking about people that are brainwashed by a particular type of religion, or people like, I'm not talking about. I mean, belief systems in generally allow humans to be manipulated easily. Yeah. And a perfect example is these anarchists that go around to different events. They like to show up at the Olympics. They like to go to like the end games of baseball and football and basketball and hockey. And what they do is they start riots. They start riots with just normal good people that are out enjoying a football game or a soccer game or whatever. And these motherfuckers show up. They got the tear gas. They got the gas masks. That's how you know they're there to start riots, because you're like, did you notice there was guys with gas masks on? It's like, yeah, dude, they brought those gas masks. They do all this little fuckery, and they do a little push here and a little push there. And the next thing you know, everyday normal people are flipping and burning cop cars. I've seen it in my own city twice when the Vancouver Canucks lost the playoffs for the Stanley Cup.
But Marcus, these people are not doing this for their own reasons. They're for the revolution.
The revolution. I'll tell you. Hey,
well, I mean,
go ahead.
Not only, I just say one more final thought, and this is something we all have to combat, and then we, before we move on from this topic, is that it's not just that they're easily manipulated, but we also have this like inert need to protect our worldview and paradigm, whether it's right or wrong. We don't adapt to change very well as animals. And there's this whole cognitive dissonance built in function into the human brain that is, I don't know, there must be some sort of protection mechanism where it was beneficial to us at one time. But now at this point, with that information coming at us in ways it never has in human history, it doesn't serve us very well. And we have this need to just protect ideas. And sometimes it's harmless and benign, and sometimes it's very harmful. And, I think this one of the things we can do is really, I try to watch that in myself, like, is this something that I want to believe, or is this something that I know? And I try to point that out with people that we're talking to in ways that are hopefully not challenging to them personally. So I'm not attacking the person. We're just trying to get them to understand where their own ideas have even come from. And we adopt so much that it's just becomes our personal identity that is really just handed to us through our culture, in our communities, through television, through, radio and pop culture influences and school friends. We just adopt pieces of things. And at some point when we're challenged, it's really good that we're making sure we're looking back on this and saying, okay, am I holding on to this because it's just something I've always believed and I'm not sure why, or is this something that I have good foundation to adopt as part of me and part of what I'm advocating for? And I see with cannabis, it's all falls under that category, because all the arguments that you hear are really not backed up with much of anything. You know, there's just things that people have been raised to believe and have been told and have been are still continuing to be repeated, like the harmful effects on, you know, development or brains and kids and all these things that you go back and look at the research and there's very little, if any, supportive evidence, but people just adopt it. So it's really good for people in the cannabis activism realm to recognize that and to be able to provide information in a way that helps people like shift ideas without triggering that need to protect their worldview, which just shuts down their ears completely.
It's very true. It's very
Well, we in the can days, one of my activist road days, we learned early that it's all about planting seeds in their minds, because you can't change someone's opinion. However, if you can give them this piece of information or this link to this knowledge so that they themselves can then go to that link themselves in their own time when they're ready for it and they're ready to absorb it, and then they actually look at it and actually read it, it affects the collective unconsciousness, not only themselves. And so those planting seeds, as we said, it was back then, it was having a pamphlet and getting into somebody's pants and hoping that they forgot about that in their pants, and then their mom goes through their pants and then pulls out that piece of paper and goes, hey, what's this? And it sparks that discussion. You know what I'm saying? It engages people and forces them to have these uncomfortable conversations that they don't want to have, but for some reason, because as you stated, the collective conscious has taught them this, and so they can't go against that because of change. But if you can give them the idea, and it has to come from themselves, and it has to be instigated by themselves. So if you can give them the seed that can sit in there and give them time, it in time will form its own manure and break down and start to grow. And when it starts to grow, it becomes their idea. And then that change can come from within them, from their own instigation, as opposed to us trying to beat it over their heads, because we realize going out there, we could only reach a certain amount of people. There was always, for every one person at a rally back in the 90s, there was 10 to 15 to 20 people at home because they were afraid to come out or show their face, et cetera, et cetera. Which now become the standard reality of people being filmed at rallies. Back then, it wasn't the case, but it was still the fear. But it became that reality consciously. So we have to, again, plant our own seeds so that it can sprout and teach others through our own education and passing that knowledge on to them so that they can judge and grow for themselves.
I couldn't agree more, but I would just add one last thing, which is I found there is one way to make a direct and immediate paradigm shift in someone, and that's with direct experience. You know, we've worked with lawmakers where we've had kids there and they're like, I don't know, we need more research, right? Bam, child has a seizure, and their idea on what is and what is not appropriate changes immediately, because we have a reaction that then, you know, changes I think it changes us physiologically, you know, when we have this, you know, almost maternal sense to this reaction to parent, paternal sense when we see people have these experiences. And I've seen people change immediately. And but that's hard to do. But it's one of the reasons I think I'd like to see more integration of people who a lot of the community thinks we should protect from cannabis integrated with cannabis. I want to see children in gardens. I want to see children at farms and interacting and showing that this plant is not going to reach out and grab them and you know, rip them from limb to limb. That the perceived harm is really just that. It's fear without reason and a basis. And this is also, and this can bring us back to where Marcus started us, and if we need to move on, then that's good. But that's also the idea behind the Make Them Watch hashtag. People change through direct experience. I want them to see what it's like for people to have a seizure, adult or child, but see the fear in the parent's eyes, see the pain, experience the trauma. And it's not quite as effective, but it still has more impact than just verbal dialogue. When they have to see it and experience it and they're uncomfortable and they don't want to watch it, that has an impact on the mind. And I think we can change hearts and minds that way. And it's hard because a lot of people don't want to share that personal pain and struggling, and they shouldn't have to. There's no other medical condition where you have to expose your suffering that way publicly to prove that you have it and maintain access. But with cannabis right now, I think we need to, and I think it really directly impacts exactly what you were saying as far as, you know, people's ability to change their perspective, and that's how we change communities. And then when they understand what happens, as I've seen it, then they say, well, we are all for these kids. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, kids with seizures, that helps. We all agree they should have it. But there's this mental disconnect that, you know, it's just going to spring out of thin air, and then families are going to have access to medicine. They're like, yeah, we want them to have it, but we just don't want it grown, right? Or we don't want it in our communities because we might smell it for 6 weeks out of a year. And, you know, that's part of a lot of the work I'm doing is really trying to focus on, well, these are not mutually exclusive ideas. You have to be able to understand that if you want to and protect these vulnerable members in your community, or adult or child, then it has to grow somewhere, and it has to be tested somewhere, and it has to be manufactured somewhere. And this is the angle I take into these local community fights in California. I mean, it's just every county is fighting tooth and nail, and it seems like they're all arguing like it's 2008 still, you know, or 2005. Like, well, we should have setbacks, and we don't know if we want it here. But that's just the wrong conversation. I don't even want to allow my board of supervisors or local officials to even have that type of conversation. In 2008, fine, but with the amount of undisputable scientific evidence that has shown this is life-saving medication, you no longer get to say, you know, or choose if we want it in our communities. That's not a choice that is an option. You don't get to choose if we're going to have insulin for kids who need it. You don't get to choose even if we're going to have opioids, and opioids are killing people by the millions, but it would be considered completely unethical to say you can't have morphine after you have heart surgery or you have an amputation of a leg. We know that these things are not up for debate as far as human rights. But with cannabis, for some reason, we're still debating it like it's a if type of question. Like, oh, yeah, it's just some people like to get high, and are we going to allow that in our community or not? But that conversation is over. It's no longer okay to say if we're going to have it in our communities. The only ethical question is how are we going to do it, and how are we going to do it in a way that protects our communities and protects the most vulnerable there. So, all right, yeah. I'm off my soapbox.
Dude, that's an awesome soapbox. I really appreciated everything you said in that. It's a very important perspective. And I've said for a long time now that it's definitely going to be the children, unfortunately, because we really shouldn't have to be exposing sick children. But this is the thing that changes the minds of the most staunch prohibitionist, the one who's just swallowed the pill. He believes in all the propaganda. And in a half a second, you can see that change with exactly what you described, someone having a seizure right in front of them and then being relieved with a drop of cannabis oil.
But it no longer just changes their mind, it changes their soul for us.
Oh, yeah.
Expose them to that. And that's what you can see it in that representative, city council person, county person, et cetera's eyes. And that's what's needed. And so they need to be shocked. They need to see the horror of these kids whose skin cannot basically stay on, and that this medicine literally holds them together. No pun intended.
You know, their shock as well is the real shock has to be, how could I have been led down such an evil path? Because when you notice that in that instant and you see like Forrest mentioned, the fear in the parents' eyes, the real experience of it happening, I mean, I'm guaranteeing you 9.9 out of 10 would stand there with their jaw on the floor, unable to really process what was happening.
Well, and that's why I share these pictures of these EB kids, and they can be graphic. You know, it's hard to look at. But let me tell you, I know you guys have seen it, but some watching might not have. If you go to the Caladrius Network on Instagram or on Facebook, you can see some of these pictures. And they're the most mild pictures I have to share. I'm trying to not intentionally exploit or post gory photos. And I have a file that parents have sent me that I just don't know if people are ready to see yet. I don't want to scare people off. But if you look at those pictures of those EB kids, realize you're seeing the most tame pictures I can try to show to get the point across without making people not want to come back, because it's
What's
horrific.
the condition again? Can you say the condition?
Yeah, the condition's called epidermolysis bullosa, bullosa. And yeah, if you want to, have your paradigm shifted, go ahead and Google that and see what those kids go through.
And what is the root cause of this? Is there a single cause for all of these?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, it's a genetic malformation. So it's just a genetic fluke where their body doesn't produce the protein. There's a protein that holds our layers of skin together, like Velcro. Yeah, and when you don't produce that, the layers of skin slide on each other, and if you bump it hard enough, then it starts the blistering process. So it's just like a burn, right? It blisters and then peels off and dies and tries to heal, but your body never stops doing that, which is why they call them butterfly kids. A lot of the parents don't like that. They like to call them like turtle kids because they're tough. But the term is like they call them butterfly kids because their skin is so soft that when you bump it, it comes off. And we've seen huge improvements in their ability to heal and regenerate skin quickly and get them off the other medications. Because remember, some of the damage, and this goes back to what Marcus said about the pictures of Silas. I've hurt my son treating his condition, but it wasn't with cannabis. I've given him drugs that it's hard to talk about. I hold so much regret for giving him for such a long amount of time. Horrible drugs from our doctor. And these kids are no different. So what happens is not only are they sick, but then you give them drugs that just destroy their body. So they're being given back to the EB kids now, topical ketamine. Right. And they're 2.5 years old or younger, and they're on Dilaudid, right? And topical morphine. So what happens over time is not only are you sick and struggle with these conditions, but your body becomes an addict, and it never functions well, in that condition. So what we're seeing with them is
you're just treating the symptoms, and you're not treating the underlying cause of the disease itself, and you're deadening the body's own nervous system, which is there to sense discomfort, to tell you that something is just not correct. But I wonder, again, so there's two things that cannabis can potentially help with. Not only is cannabis wonderful in its wound healing properties, but also just anti-inflammatory aspects alone. So are these treatments topical for us? I know that you create like a subdermal thing, but you are also treating this condition topically.
Yeah, so I spent a couple years now working on a topical cream that, with no bells and whistles, it's just designed to work. And we worked with these EB families, and I don't have them prepared, but if we want, or we could do another show on this, I could get pictures ready. But it's just the anti-inflammatory properties are, with knees like the size of like cantaloupes, just completely swollen, to within 3 or 4 weeks, it looks like a completely different leg, just huge. So significant anti-inflammatory properties. Yeah. And pain modulation and management. And then when we see that we get them off of some of these drugs that suppress the whole system, and some families are doing large internal dosing as well. So the kids have a G tube, and they'll just do upwards of 150 milligrams THC and 300 CBD a day internal dosing. The kids show no sign of intoxication whatsoever, but that also will knock the whole body inflammation down. You get benefit to the endocannabinoid system so that it can be functioning in the most efficient manner that it can. And essentially, you just see these kids start to transform through a combination of a quicker time for the wounds to heal and healthier skin. And healthier skin becomes a little bit more robust. And one of the key things that is efficient or effective for epidermolysis bullosa kids is the control of itching. And cannabis cream can do that. We're still trying to make it better, but when your skin, like when you get road rash, if anyone remembers, or a big kind of skin wound, or a tattoo, right? When it starts to heal, it itches, right? That's the dangerous cycle, because as the wound's healing, then the kids are starting to itch, right? And what happens when you itch, you break the skin in these kids, and then you're just reopening this wound constantly. And a lot of times that's what gets them is eventual either staph infection or skin cancer from the constant wounds. So these creams really help with that as well. So it's kind of that whole cycle. You're not able to cure the condition, but if you are able to end pain, modulate the pain, decrease time for wound healing, and overall anti-inflammatory properties in the body, we see dramatic quality of life changes in these kids. And there's significant progress going on with gene editing right now. We don't have to get into CRISPR and those things, but these are probably going to be some of the frontline kids to look at potential gene editing applications of some of those. So our goal is to really improve their quality of life and just make sure they're here, so when the cure comes, they can experience it.
Forrest, Forrest, can you hear me?
I can.
I'd like to donate to you something a little bit to you. I have a vast supply of 88 to 1 CBD. I got the SC lab test on it. It's clean. It's beautiful stuff. Everybody I've given it to has thought it was absolutely amazing. So I'd like to give you some. If I can forward the SC lab, take it along with it. And the second thing I want to say to you is I forwarded all the information about the kids and your site and everything to Jeff Sessions with a letter asking him to pull his head out of his ass and take a good close look at the whole thing.
I would love to do a presentation to Congress. Let me get those guys in front of me. I'd love to tell them exactly what we think with our kids there.
Well, I sent it to Jeff Sessions, and I also sent it to a few other people up in government. We'll see what happens, if anything. Those guys are too busy covering their own asses right now for the money that they're spending doing other nonsense. But I want to offer you this CBD. I've been trying to make it available to people for $7 a gram, but I want to give you guys all you need, no charge.
Oh, that's wonderful. We will put it to good use and get it to those who need it. Thank you very much, Indra.
Very nice. Very nice. Welcome, Indra, by the way, and D420K. And I don't know if there's anyone else I missed, but I never want to interrupt good conversations, but I know you guys don't take it personally. So welcome to Hash Church, episode 157. Just about 1 hour in here to today's episode. Got about 542 people watching in the chat room and listening away. And yeah, I love gathering every Sunday with all of you and seeing where the discussion goes. It always feels like, I know you feel like you don't want to be up on a soapbox for us, but it just seems like such an important aspect of the tip of the spear, so to speak. There's a whole handle and there's all this other component, but the tip of the spear should get a lot of attention. And I just don't think that there is anyone that could argue with you because of how you're coming at this and where you're coming from. It's like you said, you don't have a product to sell. You're not.
Well, it's also how intelligent he comes across, and the empathy and sympathy comes through in your voice because you've experienced it firsthand, and you hear that. If you don't, you're not human, and you are pushing them into the uncomfortable region in ways that no other person can. And I'm thankful that we have spokespersons like you that unfortunately have come through the hard route and had to educate yourself regarding the realities that you face. But you and Silas are the type of catalysts that are going to affect real change for many. And we thank you for taking on your difficulty with a dignity and a grace that benefits us all.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, I'm just honored to be here with you guys. You know that, and you've paved the way here. And what I just saw was that there was this disrespect that I thought was inappropriate to people like you, the activists in the community, and it was justified with this illusion that it's all a game and none of the things you're saying with all the patients you've helped is real, and they just had all these excuses to justify not taking some really heartfelt activists seriously. And I just felt like I had another angle to offer that to help to can combat that exact dissidence in their thinking. And say, with us working together, we can make change. And so I'm just honored to be here with you guys. It's not a game to me. You know, this is a serious subject. You know, I say it on CNN too. I mean, it's all fine. There's a lot of great fun things that come out of cannabis. It's not all serious. I realize that I am not the most fun topic when it comes to cannabis, and I enjoy all the other fun sides of cannabis as well. But it's the fact that it's only framed that way that really bothered me. That every time there's a thing on, you know, the news or CNN, like, oh, it's 420 in Colorado and everybody's sparking up, and you know the citizens are tired of it, and it's just always framed in this way that it's just a big game. So I just felt that I had something to add to really show that there are parts of this conversation that are not funny, and it's very serious and should be taken very seriously. And I felt like I had that to add to the conversation. And
actually, as long as it's legal, if they want to make fun of medical, make fun of industrial, but legally allow it, I'm a happy guy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm with you there.
Well, but you know, the public making fun of it, the way comedians have always chose to create the stereotypical jokes about it, I think all that has a big negative sort of impact on people that are trying to see this plant as, you know, for what it really is. You're sending mixed messages. I haven't seen this new show yet, but I've heard Disjointed is a lot of like not the most popular cannabis humor. It's kind of negative, and I don't know. I haven't seen it, but
I have, and it is all the negative stereotypes plus one on the guest list. Yeah. Sad. They had an opportunity to really do some intelligence, and yes, some of the lingo is current, but I also saw one of the people who was assisting or in the production, and she is a persona non grata for what she's done in our community, and it's only making us all look bad. And I thought we were past these degenerate stoner stereotypes, which is why we have, and I come to Hash Church, because I want to have intelligent talk with intelligent people, as opposed to these stereotypic, hey dude, what's going on, man? I'm so fucking baked, man. I can't even think straight, you know. But, you know, we've all had to deal with the unfortunate realities of life, and many of these realities, when people, you know, had AIDS and stuff like that, people didn't realize that they were ostracized completely from their families, and they were basically ostracized by everyone. We were literally sometimes their only physical contact of somebody who would even speak to them. And that was beyond disheartening to see society so ignore the realities that we were forced to deal with. Those realities, and those are humbling realities. You know, when you have to stare into open cysts on people's arms, you know, open sores to the point where you're uncomfortable just even looking at them. You know, but you have to have the inner strength to stand there and say, this person is a patient. They need help. They need help now. And I'm here to do that. And that, to me, is where I feel so insulted by Disjointed. Even though it is humorous, it still is a poke at our reality that, you know, a lot of our reality isn't funny, as you know, for us firsthand. It's not funny. There's ugly realities to this, but I really hoped more for something like that, and that's my opinion. I'm not a fan of the show, but I encourage each one of you to, I encourage you, old man, to look at it, to see it for yourself, you know, to judge for yourself, because some of this stuff is giggly, but some of the stuff is very cringeworthy. The most cringeworthy for me is when they went and did Jack Herrera's funeral, and they mocked it, and I was there, and it was not handled in any type of disrespectful way, in any way, shape, or form, nor the portrayals. They changed his name to Heron as opposed to Herrera, but that type of portrayal, it was literally a slap in the face to me and my community. And it's very difficult for me to then get behind something like that, that totally insults heroes. I mean, I would not know you if it had not been for Jack Herrera coming to my university in 1989 and me getting off my ass. Okay. And then to have him mocked in a show like that. So they made it seem like he grew Herrera, the strain, which was not the case. The strain was bestowed upon him out of utter fucking respect, out of all the hard work and dedication that he has done. And so to perpetuate that into the eyes of the ether of the collective consciousness is disrespectful to Jack's name and the hard work that he's done and all the hard work a lot of us have done. And so, yes, it's made in jest, but it is insulting the way that it was presented to me.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the sort of the
Wait a minute. Does that mean you didn't think the show was funny?
I would say he did.
It was cringeworthy in areas. Yes, I did laugh at times, and yes, they did use. You know, I think one of the characters called Dabby and the Dabber and stuff like that. I mean, they're current with their lingo. Don't get me wrong, and it's nice to hear the current lingo being used properly, as opposed to, you know, the silliness that we're or the puns we're always left with. But it was disingenuous, and I can't get behind something.
Don't you find that the majority of cannabis humor movies over the decades have been kind of like making us look a bit like losers?
Of course. That's not just making us look a little bit like losers. Listen, it's a huge part of the story. Like, if you look back, like, first of all, the culture that's basically setting the tone for everything is Hollywood. Hollywood makes the movies, Hollywood makes the TV shows. Everyone wants to export America's culture. Everyone's importing it to their countries. Everyone wants to be a part of it. That's a major point of contention with me, because people can blame William Randolph Hearst all they want. He may have started it, but it's these people that are continuing to propagate it by, you know, shitty jokes on Jimmy Kimmel or whatever it is, you know, anti and sort of prohibition-based stereotypical jokes that I just feel like, man, like, when there's a side of this that Forrest is coming in and sharing with us, how can you make jokes like this? That this is a disservice to the community. It's keeping people from seeing the actual benefits of the plant by ha 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 ha.
And when people think they're going in to fight activity in their community, that's what they envision. Like, well, we just don't want that in our community. You know, people the non-cannabis related community, that's their only experience is their television for the most part, or horror stories they see in the newspaper. And that's when they go in and say, well, we don't want this in our community. A lot of times that's what they're envisioning, is this dumb stoner culture that really doesn't exist in very many places. And it does, yeah, it's harmful.
Well, Cheech and Chong, they were snapshots in time. And I actually, one time I did a panel with Tommy Chong, and afterwards we were out in a smoking circle getting high. And I asked him that. I confronted him as an activist. I was like, hey, you know, I really felt your humor set us back a long time. And he said, I get that, kid, respectfully, but you got to understand, it was the darkest days of prohibition. The only way we could get through with humor. And I said, much respect coming from you. I get that, because you have literally one of the few people who have carved a reality out of nothing into Hollywood, and that's very difficult to do. However, the continued perpetuation of those stereotypes and prolonging them into the 70s, past the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, and into the now, and now with Disjointed, are the problems, you know.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, the understanding of cannabis in the 70s was not what it is now. And that's why, you know, in my first kind of opening statement I made there was, we can't even talk about cannabis like we're talking about it in 2008 today, let alone, you know. So yeah, I love Cheech and Chong, man. Growing up, all that stuff was great. But the time is, that's the whole problem. The understanding has changed. The evidence behind the understanding is there and has changed, but the conversation hasn't. And that's really where the problem is. And that's what I see a lot of people doing in their local communities, is they're allowing really outdated tactics and arguments to be made about cannabis and how it's going to be integrated or not in our communities, in a conversation that in 2017 is completely different. If you're open and understand, you know, the just wave of good data and science that is just being done every day and coming at us like a tsunami. You know, if we can just keep up with just a little bit of that, you can see that a lot of the conversation is just old and outdated. It doesn't even pertain anymore, or shouldn't. But unfortunately, it's just prevalent in communities, and it's continuing to be successful. Unfortunately, we're seeing bans, you know, all over California in every county.
Well, I'll give this up to Tommy. You know, if you go see him and you go see him speak, his memory is impeccable. He's articulate. You can tell he's a smart guy. And in that sense, he's kind of showing that the stereotype maybe isn't a stereotype. He's outliving all of his contemporaries that were drinkers and smokers. He survived cancer and beat it using cannabis. So it's you know, I'm in that same boat of not liking the, you know, back in the 70s, hey, absolutely. I thought it was hilarious. I was a huge fan of Cheech and Chong. I just thought, man, these guys are, and it's true, you know, I was a very, very little kid at that time. I can't really understand what the mentality was. Some of the panelists can, I'm sure. It was probably a pretty damn dark time after Nancy Reagan came out and said, just say no. Was that in the 80s or the 70s?
That was in the 80s. So he did that in the early 70s. He did it during the Nixon.
It was a comedy routine. It was meant to be funny.
Yeah.
And it was meant to be poking fun at ourselves. I mean, it's the classic example is art imitating life, or is life imitating art?
Right.
I mean, there was already kind of like a Hispanic community in East LA that was just like Cheech, right? So, and yeah, they were all smoking weed, and it was part of just the culture of who they are, and it's just kind of like the deadheads and the fish heads. I mean,
you know what? In a sense,
Mark, you remember we were able to smoke at fish shows or at dead shows in arenas where if during a Neil Young you took out one lighter, you were immediately swarmed by security. So what was it that Bill Graham was able to do? Why were the Bill Graham shows when the Grateful Dead played, why were they allowed to smoke weed at the venues? And again, if weed was being smoked at the venues, that means there was a traveling circus outside that was bringing all kinds of different, you know, things, and, you know, not just drugs, but wares and everything like that. So like when the Dead came to town, it was a real traveling circus that actually brought all kinds of, you know, not just creepy people, but just weirdness into the town. And sometimes, like in Vegas, you would never even know that the Dead were in town because Vegas is already pretty weird to begin with. But I'll just go back to Cheech and Chong just being more of a reflection on society, you know? I mean,
I would compare them honestly now in a way that I've never really seen before. I would compare them to what Dave Chappelle came and did years later with stereotypical race humor, and pushing that envelope maybe in and he got the same thing. He got like a lot of groups saying, hey man, you're not doing us any favors here. We're trying to have people take us seriously. But yet at the time, Chappelle's comedy was so disruptive and so hilarious and made us all think in a different way that who's to say what's good and bad, I suppose. You know?
Well, I would say Tommy Chong, when I think it was in 2016, so not too long, a year and a half ago or so, the Sacramento Bee, the capital here in California, did a 3-day story on my family in Silas. They called it the Silas Project. You can look it up, Sacramento Bee and Silas Project. But the sheriff had raided Silas's grow. I was fighting here and raising hell. And they did a 3-day story on that. And Tommy Chong picked it up and shared it on his Twitter and all those things. And that, you know, and it's still to this day, you don't see a lot of that sort of posting coming from him and some others, but I definitely appreciated that, and it showed that he is keeping up on some of the other contexts that cannabis activism has taken shape in the last 10 years, and got a lot of attention from that because of him. So Thanks, Tommy.
One of the things that Cheech Marin is heavily involved in is establishing a museum for Latino art in, I think it's Riverside, California. You can Google it. There was a story a couple of weeks ago in the news on it. But again, he's assembled the largest collection of Latino art, and he's now going to, you know, basically, I think they're looking to raise a couple $1 million to turn this library side, I believe it is, into basically a museum where this art can be shown. So, I mean, these people are doing beneficial things in society. They're not just, yeah. I think that, you know, the positions they played back in that, you know, comedy routine, they're actors, man. They're acting that part. They're both really, really high intellect people with a lot more to contribute to society than just up and smoke, you know. They were just portraying a couple stoners in that movie.
Well, what other context could you do it in back then? I mean, the understanding of cannabis was pretty much
And if
limited.
it wasn't Cheech and Chong, it would have been some other comedy routine making fun of it. So they were just making fun of our stuff. If you go back and listen to their comedy routines on their first couple albums, they're actually fucking hilarious. And if you listen to it high, it's even better. But I was actually one of the guys who had the Big Bamboo record album, and inside the album they had a big bamboo rolling paper.
I still have mine.
I was one of the guys old enough to actually roll a joint in that paper. It was about a quarter worth of weed, but we rolled a joint of big brown Mexican weed that we had to take the seeds out, but we smoked that. I remember the Cheech and Chong joint. That was a good one. That
I
lasted
still
a
have
long
that
time.
album with the paper still in it.
Papers. Those papers were made by Esmeralda at the time that big album came out. I know I bought 10 of those albums and had those Esmeralda papers around for quite a long time. Used to roll as big.
Oh yeah, and you had to clean the seeds out on the record album, right? I mean, that's just
right. But you know,
time honored tradition of having seeds just go down the side of your record album as you were cleaning out your weed. You don't do that anymore.
But you know, first, people are afraid. That's the whole deal. I mean, to paraphrase an idiot who is arguing with Trump right now, the more afraid dogs are, the louder they bark. And you got your people in the community that are barking the loudest are the ones that are most fearful of this. And until you find a way to placate those people or bring them into the fold of understanding, it's going to be a difficult fight, because fear of the unknown is the scariest thing that human beings have. And these people don't know, and so they're afraid. And
well, this is why I think they're fighting a losing battle, because you can only watch Fox News or only watch CNN or only be red or blue or however people like to sanction off their information. And you can only search for bad research that's been done over the last 20 years, trying to find harmful effects of cannabis to reinforce your views. But illness is non-discriminatory. Cancer hits 1 in 3. Rare disease, albeit rare, is rather common. You know, when you have 1 in 50,000, 1 in 300,000 of a whole bunch of different rare diseases, you know, it hits people in all demographics. And when that experience happens, that change is a ripple through their community. You know, so when I get people from church groups who come with their kids seizing and they don't want their church to know, but within 6 months their kids have relative stability and everyone's asking the family why, and they start to feel more and more confident to share them because they see that everything that they've known has not been 100% accurate, or everything they've been told. That's like a seed in that community. You know, we get families from the military and from the sheriff's department who come in as really hardcore ideologues. But like we said, experience has a way of kicking your ass and really changing the way you see the world. And that's why anyone who thinks they're fighting cannabis from being around and being used as a medicine, it's just has no idea what they're talking about, because it's just a different conversation when it comes to the medical needs of cannabis and how it's going to hit people, whether you believe in it or not. And when your doctor tells you there's no other option, the only thing that might help you is maybe some of these cannabinoid-based therapies. People's worlds are going to change, and it changes within those communities. And I'm seeing it happen now. I'm seeing whole church groups that were against us one year. One of the kids in the group gets ill, and all of a sudden, everyone's experience is different, and their attitudes are different. So,
have you ever linked with Subcool, Forrest?
I did Subcool show for the first time a couple weeks ago. How you doing, Subcool?
Good. He's on. I think he's muted right now.
Yeah, I've only done it once, but we had a good time. They let me go off, and that's always fun.
Awesome. You know, Sub's been doing some pretty awesome community work in the cannabis community, from toy drives to all sorts of different, like planting gardens to help different people. And he's always sort of been really good at that sort of quality of stuff while running his business and doing all that other stuff. I got to give him props for that. And I wasn't sure if you guys had linked up, but definitely I'm glad you have, because he's just helpful.
Yeah, he makes me nervous driving and doing that, though.
Nice.
Careful, Subcool.
Look, he's smoking a bowl. Oh, goodness. Well, that's good. It's good that we got a nice big room happening here right now. Wade made it back in. Seemed like he was having a little bit of internet trouble there. I was kind of picturing this hilarious skit in my face, because to me, Wade just seems like the most chillest, most relaxed dude. And I was picturing like him not getting into church and just screaming and running around his house like, damn it, I want to get into church. Like as a joke, because I know that's not what you were doing. You were probably like super calm going, oh, geez, this isn't working. I can't get in here. Oh, I'll keep trying. I'll just keep trying. Whereas myself, I'm not going to lie, I have gotten fairly upset at my computer when I feel the responsibility of getting church going, even, like having to be somewhere on a Sunday where the internet works and I can, it's a responsibility, I'll tell you.
And have you found it helped a lot when you got angry at your computer?
Absolutely. I feel that when I get really angry with my computer and break it right over my face, that's when I just feel that things work out the best for me. No, absolutely not. Things never work out. Yes, I can hear you, Subcool. Welcome.
I'm actually just in a parking lot, just so you know. I'm not actually driving down the damn road. No, I had a comment I wanted to make. And this is the duality of what you guys are talking about. California right now, in Northern California where I live, is set to bury the fucking country in cannabis and keef. We're going to bury the country in weed. But I was at a restaurant on Tuesday afternoon having dinner at a local place I like to eat at because there's lots of tourists. And I like people and like to talk. So the lady asked me what I did for a living, and I told her that I grew cannabis. And I told her that I also sell my cannabis and raise money for sick children. And she said, well, what does cannabis have to do with children? She was 55 years old, upperly mobile, big ol' ass diamond on her hand, driving a BMW, family full of yuppie wine drinkers. And she looked at me and she said, oh, well, does that work? That's what we're fighting in this country. She is an intelligent, articulate woman who was fucking clueless that cannabis can help kids with autism and seizures and stuff. Right. And this is not us, this is not what I call us, the stoner community or the fam community. This is what I consider to be America. And she was clueless that cannabis could maybe help kids with seizures and stuff. And of course, you can imagine the mouthful of information she got from me. She was backing up a little bit, but that's really what I'm seeing this week. We are producing so much cannabis and medicine right now that we could treat the whole world. And yet most Americans still think that a Valium is the cure to our problems. So I just wanted to point that out. It got under my skin this week.
Well, there's definitely a system that's been put in place for that all to be the way it is. And it seems as though people will only hear it when they're told it by particular, the people they trust, the anchor on the news or the newspaper that they open.
One person at a time, just like everybody.
Yeah, well, you can see how fast that's going, Mark Sheldon. Whereas when they want everyone to know something, they put it into their little media system, and it's just like, wham, 4 billion people in one shot. But
isn't it great? Isn't it great when you finally do talk to sort of random strangers on the way back from the airport in the shuttle, to people that you meet wherever, when they ask what is it that you do, and you start to tell them, start to describe that, no, this isn't Cheech and Chong and getting high. This is really about medicine and the reunification of human beings with this plant, because until the last century, which as Todd used to say is the cannabis deficient century, humans were united with this plant. So this is just the reunification century, and it is a mission of education, and it is sometimes one person at a time. I've talked to people, again, who had no clue. I got their email address, and then I sent them like the Meshulam movie, sent them links to Ash Church, sent them links so they could actually see for themselves. No, there are clinical trials. There is validity to taking this thing to the next level. And yeah, I mean, so winning people over one at a time. I think 10 years from now, this will be a mute discussion, but
I hope so. And I would also say we should always represent as we. Someone's got a reverberation in the microphone there. I'm not sure who's not muted, but I think it just disappeared. I always got to give props to the stoner community too for being the stewards for so long. And basically, who the heck do you think came out with all this? Who started digging and learning all this information? It was people who were using cannabis, oh my goodness, to get high, to feel euphoria, to feel positive, to relieve stress, to be like, yeah. So as much as the stereotype is, we should always also respect the actual experience of feeling elevated, feeling the so-called high. It's not a bad thing. It shouldn't be a bad word. We shouldn't be embarrassed by it, because it is it's the thing that has kept it alive, because, for cannabis to be around in the way that it is, for people like Wendy Turner to get cannabis for her son Colton, and for people like Forrest to meet people like Wade, it's like people who were getting high, who were the stewards of that plant for all those decades. You can call it medicine, it is, but it was that euphoria that got a lot of us involved passionately, to the point where
U1 receptors, right?
Yeah. So always got to give
most prevalent receptor, or one of the most prevalent receptors in the human brain. So, I mean, that's not a happy accident. No. We were talking last week with Chris about the fountain of youth. I did a little bit of research into that. I'm absolutely convinced that when people smoked cannabis before they really understood the biological impacts and then the cannabinoid system, think about it, when Native people smoked it probably for the first time and felt like no more pain or no more anxiety, or they probably did say, hey, this could make me live forever, right? This is the fountain of youth, right?
I always think of John's quote where he said, it's hard to feel bad when you feel good.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said.
Indra said that like a year ago on Hash Church. She's like, it's hard to feel bad when you feel good. And I was just like, wow, that's just so simple. And that's about as accurate. And that's it. It's profound.
Yeah. So the terpenes drew us in and the cannabinoids made us stay. That's my quote me on that.
Nice.
Mark, let me share something else with the panel. And there's some people here that don't know. So I have and this is new to me. I just find this cool. So I have alpha-1. It's a respiratory disease. It's a liver disease. My white blood cells attack my internal organs, and I don't have a protein that protects it. So I'm dissolving from the inside out. So I quit using cannabis when they told me I had lung problems for a long time. And some people that know me closer know I had a bout with alcoholism and all kind of drugs and everything. 292 days clean of all drugs right now except for cannabis. But this is my point. When I started using cannabis again, I really obviously I was like, wow, why the fuck did I quit using this? But recently my disease is really kicking my ass, and the pain I experience is just brutal. And we talk about the benefits of cannabis, and I'm subcool and I smoke weed all the time. But the last couple of days I've actually noticed like just brutal pain from this disease. And then I'll smoke a couple of bowls, which for me, it's really weird because when I smoke, it hurts like shit. It hurts my lungs. I can't breathe. It makes me panic a little bit because my lungs are not in great condition. But follow me here. About 5 minutes afterwards, when my lungs recover from the carcinogens of actual smoke going in them, my life all of a sudden doesn't suck. My panic goes away, and all these feelings that I have from this illness and this horrible pain that it causes all throughout the whole body, it just goes away. And I mean, it's funny that I've been an advocate for this plant for so long, but I'm telling you again today that even though it's tough for me to consume the plant because of the smoke and I consume at night, the benefit that I get from this plant mentally, emotionally, spiritually overcomes anything that it could do to me because I have to consume smoke. And in the last week or two, it is like, I'm just like, oh God, I'm in such pain. Let me take a couple of hits of this wax. And I do, and all of a sudden I'm like, hey man, I want to put on some fucking Stephen Stills and enjoy life. And so I just had to say that. I mean, after 45 years of smoking, it still does what I need it to do. That's why I'm a proponent of it.
That's awesome, man. And I guess the vaporizing is just not happening for you. It's just not strong enough. It's not giving you that relief that a good blast gives you.
It's the problem, Mark, is my lungs only will move like a quarter of an inch, so I can't empty the damn bag. Same thing with an e-nail. I can't inhale long enough, so I use a teeny bong and a teeny pipe, and then I just smoke like the teeniest piece of wax. I drop a teeny piece of wax. I don't even use a dab rig. It melts and flows down. But the amount of smoke I get, that teeny amount of smoke I get from these great concentrates we make, after my lungs go, okay, cool, the smoke's gone. Like right now, I got high about 15 minutes ago, and life changed. I mean, when I left the house, I was like, oh shit, man, I got to harvest 120 pounds. Then I'm going through a divorce. I mean, life just is bullshit. And then I smoke a couple bowls, and I'm like, hey, let's fucking get on Hash Church and hang out with my friends. So I just can't say enough for what it does.
We should, Subcool, we should get together and talk and see if we can get you set up with a good supplement regimen, because I've talked to more than a few people who have only experienced cannabis and cannabis medicine through smoking, have their life completely changed with a good supplement regimen and consistent supplement dosing. I'd be happy to put some things together and talk to you about some new ways you could approach that could introduce new types of relationship that might really help some of the things you're going through as well.
Yeah,
I would go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is Wade. I want to say, yeah, I use tinctures quite a bit, Subcool, because I've smoked most of my life, and I can't smoke enough cannabis to get the thing that I want. And long ago, I started adding hash to what I was smoking, and still, it abuses my lungs to get as much as I want. And so I supplement with tinctures. And you can find tinctures that are made that taste good for you and meantime have significant enough dose that I find it's as good. I mean, I smoke because I enjoy smoking at this point, not because it's adding to my cannabinoid levels in my blood. Forrest tells me sometimes that I maybe have too high a cannabinoid thing going in my blood, but I enjoy the state of being that I work for, and I get a lot of it from tinctures, and occasionally I have a chocolate or something, but I can't get there with just smoke anymore.
Yeah, I miss the buzzkill. I miss the buzzkill sometimes. Go ahead, Sub.
No, Forrest. Well, I want to explore this. And I'm gonna, every time I talk, I sound like I'm like, Subcool feels special, but it's not like that. These are just the facts. Super fucking high strung. This illness has really got me. I used to take 20 volumes a day, and now I don't. So I smoke high quality bubble hash all day long. Jill said yesterday, you realize you got lung disease and you smoke more than me. I said, yeah, I like it. So I take 1,000 milligrams of cannabis every night in a form of a peppermint patty, or I would not sleep at all. And I think, and you said something earlier, I think I have too much damn cannabis in my body. Like for real. Like I smoke constantly, and I eat constantly, and I drink constantly. There's 2 points to this. I've never tried concentrated Rick Simpson oil, like made from something that'll really put me down. But I want to talk about tolerance. I mean, you said you've eaten glycerin all your life and tinctures and stuff. I mean, how many people are, like me, they're in their 40s or 50s and they've used cannabis all their life for medicine. And as you said, you just can't smoke enough anymore, or a tincture. I mean, what is the solution to that? Back the hell off?
Well, I mean, understanding what tolerance is, I think, is really important for everybody. And I'm sure Mark could add a lot to this. So if I missed something, let me know. But tolerance is essentially, it's good to understand the physiology of phytocannabinoids. And essentially, to boil it down simply, is they mimic endogenous cannabinoids. So the body has a hard time telling the difference between the two. So THC's chemical structure so closely resembles anandamide that when it bonds to the CB1 receptor, the body thinks it's the signal from anandamide. It acts accordingly. We get miracle responses in the body, right? We don't get the consequences of neurotransmitter regulation gone wild. So when you're flooding your body with high doses of THC, your body has more than one safety mechanism in it. Your endocannabinoid system is a safety mechanism, really. Its job is to trigger and respond to things that are going wrong in the body, specifically. When you're flooding your body with THC, other safety mechanisms start to trigger. And one of those is the body's observance of over and underproduction of anandamide. So it starts to think, wow, I must be really overproducing endocannabinoids because I look at all this anandamide in my stream, even though it's THC. I'm really happy. So what it starts to do is it starts to down-regulate CB1 receptors, which means it starts to shut them off. And essentially what happens is it's not that people with high tolerance are able to just handle a bunch of cannabis. They just can't absorb the cannabis. So they're urinating it out and it's flushing out the body in other ways because your body is a safety mechanism has turned off a large majority of the CB1 receptors. And this is where the concept of a reset comes in with some people. So when you withhold the phytocannabinoids from the body, all of a sudden the body says, oh my God, I've quit producing all this anandamide. Something must be wrong. And it starts to upregulate and turn on all the CB1 receptors, essentially. So you can, if you find that you're in a place where you've built up a lot of tolerance, what you've done is you've shut down a lot of CB1 receptors. And you can find that if you can get those to upregulate and turn back on, you can get just as much of a feeling with less cannabis because you're able to absorb more. So you can lower the dose without losing some of the effect that you like, but it takes time to allow the body to upregulate those receptors. But when I say time, we're talking, there's some studies that have shown 72 hours, but a week is more than enough a lot of times to have that sort of effect.
Forrest, can I tell one of my stories? I'm famous for stories. Can I tell one of my stories?
It's Marcus's show. You gotta ask him.
So it's short. So when I got popped the second time and did my little John up in the can and everything, I was under lock and key for around 19 months. And before I left, I had sent Jilly about an eighth of Jack's Cleaner and about an eighth of Danny Boy to Oregon because we were supposed to meet the day before they grabbed me. So she put some of it away, and bless her heart forever. And when I got out, there was more time. I had to pee for, all that, the game. But then there became a day when I was allowed to get high again for the first time in almost 2 years. And this is a guy who smokes, full time, all the time. And so I'm in my head, I'm that guy. So Jill's making dinner and we get the weed out. There's only a couple grams left. She saved it. And so I take one hit of the Danny Boy. And I'm telling you right now, before I finish the story, I should have fucking stopped there. But then I took another hit of that Jack's Cleaner, that lemony freshness, and she went into the kitchen, and I got so hot, like uncomfortably, like every person that ever came to my house in Florida, and I got them so stoned they got lost when they left. It was like instant karma payback. Jill was talking like Charlie Brown's teacher, womp, 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 womp. I couldn't talk, I couldn't communicate. And my favorite part of the story, it wasn't until the next day that I could actually communicate how fucking stoned I actually got, because I kept going, I'm really high, and she kept going, oh good. The next morning I was like, look, the house was flying through space. So I guess all my receptors reset, my body went back to a virgin state. And the other funny part about this story is for about 6 months, every time I got high, I'd pass out and Jill would go, I thought this guy was some hardcore stoner or some shit. And it took 4 or 5 months before I could function again as a normal person smoking cannabis. I just know. I like that story. It makes me laugh. 2
years off. That's a substantial break for sure.
The last thing I would just add, Subcool, and again, let's get in touch after the show, and I want to help, and I can even send you some things, is that there is a completely new experience people have when you keep sustained levels of healing cannabinoids in the body for a 2 to 3 week period of time. Right. And when, as opposed to what we're used to, which are these blasts, which are spike and waves, you get these big increases, these decreases, and you can continue to do that. But when you keep a supplement level, a sustained level in the body, different types of reactions start to happen. And we, at this point, I've seen so many amazing results in different conditions that, you get more and more confident saying, I would highly doubt that it would not have some sort of improvement in your condition. And a lot of times it's a different type of relationship, but when you experience it, it just shows how much we still have to learn about this amazing plant and different ways we can integrate it into our lives.
Forrest, I appreciate it, and I will definitely take you up on this. It's the anxiety level, and go off again. The problem with alpha and cannabis is, so Friday, I felt great. I started harvesting my crop. There's teeth falling all over the place. My condition feels pretty good. I feel normal, and I'm digressing into personal but then when it hits, it's just a whammy. Like last night, I couldn't take 3 steps without gasping and panting, so I don't move very fast. And I honestly believe that it's not just alpha. I believe that is a panic condition. I believe my lungs are vibrating or whatever the hell's going on, and I can't breathe, and so it exasperates itself. And I've always believed if I could get an infusion of cannabis at that time, whatever cannabinoid works for me, whether it be CBN or whatever the hell it is, if I could get an infusion of cannabis at that time without taking a giant hit of hash into lungs that are already trashed, I think I could get much better results than sitting there. And I told you I gave up drugs. So when I have a full-blown panic attack, a seizure attack, the only tool I have right now is I went to a class that taught me how to not shit myself, to be present, not to be past or future trip. And I can actually take a panic attack and not lose my mind. But God, would it be cool if I had a liquid or something that I could consume that would act fast to bring that down. And you're telling me there's something available.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's called kava extract sub. I extracted somebody for a friend who was having serious anxiety, and it's not a very big yield. It's a beautiful golden oil, and just a tiny dot of it on the end of a flat Chinese chopstick will bring a speed freak down to ground in 10 minutes. It's the hottest thing since sunburn when it comes to anxiety. I'll be glad
to buy it. Can I buy kava extract?
Well, I would second that.
No, you can buy the kava and I'll extract it for you. How about
kava extract is amazing, and but we've also seen with PTSD and other issues, the problem is it's learning how to look at it in a little bit of a different way. We're reactive with cannabis right now, so we have an experience and we go to cannabis for that reactive response. And with a lot of these supplement health approaches that can be used with cannabis, it's a proactive response, right? So instead of using cannabis and looking forward in time to how you're going to feel in a few minutes or an hour, we want to look at supplementing these cannabinoids in the body in a way where we look backwards. So we look back and say, okay, how many anxiety attacks did I have in the last 30 days? We get a good journal of that and see what we have. And we start to work with these supplements for 2-3 weeks. And then we look back over that period of time and we measure how many did we have? Well, gosh, I only had 3 as opposed to 17. Okay, we're on the right track. And it's a different type of process. And it's a different type of it takes a little more time, right? It's not something that it's immediate, but I've seen it time and time again, especially with PTSD, sort of serious anxiety attacks and those sort of things, that it absolutely can benefit. And I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if you're in a state of panic and you're concerned about your health, all those things modulate your endocannabinoid system. And your endocannabinoid system's job is to regulate the things in the body that prevent panic attacks and prevent these other things from happening. So they're all tied in together, which is, why I advocate everybody being on a supplement of CBD and certain other cannabinoids, THC being one of them, CBC, etc., because like an omega-3, because it does have this proactive preventative ability to help the body ride through heavy times of stress that we might not see coming, all sorts of things. So anyway, we don't have to keep going.
Sometimes I hate speaking in front of really smart people, but I'm going to head and do it now. One of the things that, you would think I would know this stuff, but this show is definitely about education, so let's learn together. So I had recently I had the opportunity to be a judge for the High Times Cannabis Cup, and they gave me the hash. We could talk a whole show about that, but that's not what we're talking about. They gave me CBD medibles, like 35 kinds of CBD medibles, and That was the most CBD I've ever consumed in my life. And the two things that I noticed that surprised me was it did not sedate me at all. Like I thought if I took 400 or 500 milligrams of CBD at nighttime, I would go to bed, but absolutely not. The other thing, and you talked about looking backwards, and I want to tell you that during that time, I think my head was clearer, and I think I felt smarter. What do you think of those observations about high quantities of CBD?
Yeah, you grew brain cells.
Well, I mean, we see across the board, and this is one of the myths I like to dispel. A lot of the concern with cannabis is, right, the effects on children and learning, and does it decrease IQ points or not? I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, but again, we're working with developmentally delayed and severe conditions, but we see across the board cognitive improvement in kids. We have kids who, I mean, sometimes dramatic, from not speaking to starting to form words and starting to use one word sounds, you know, so severe conditions. But from kids, take Silas, for example, from kids, at times he's a one word kid, you know, he can't really structure sentences together. And as his brain gets healthier, and when we introduced cannabinoids, all of a sudden we were getting full sentences out of him. Like he would say things, we'd both turn and look like it had to be another kid, you know. So I'm 100% on the train of when you improve neurocognition function, neurotransmitter regulation in the brain, when the body's able to work, you know, homeostasis isn't just a buzzword. When it's able to be in the proper balance, there's no reason to think that the functioning of your physiological system is going to be better. And that also includes the function of the brain and cognition. So I'm not one that has to be convinced. I see it every day.
All that turns around the ability to pay attention. If kids can't pay attention because they're so involved with what else is going on in their body and the irritation is so great, they can't pay attention. So you might mistake that for not developing. But the minute they can pay attention, the minute they can actually get some relief and start paying attention, they advance rapidly, just like any other being. This business of being able to pay attention is something that we don't pay enough attention to in our society.
Morning. I was going to talk to you, what you were just saying about the high amounts of CBD. Good morning, guys. Morning, son. I just went through this, dude. Like, I was having a lot of problems with my knees and stuff like that. And I take CBD, but I don't take high amounts of it. And they had these CBD bites, and it was at the High Times Cannabis Cup here. And they gave me a bag full of CBD edibles and stuff like that, just like you said. And I consumed, and I was able to run up the stairs. Like, I was just kind of relating. When you said that to me, I was like, fuck, that's why I'm digging through these bags beside me, right? I'm like, I ate all these CBD bites, and they were so good. And they were 250 grams a bite. And I was eating 2 of them at a time, but I can totally relate to that. So I started eating more and higher amounts of CBD right now. And I'm concurring. It's not sedating me at all. I'm getting more done. I'm more active. I'm getting into doing more things. Start going back to rehab, like as in for the gym for my injuries and to Tai Chi and stuff. But I've been eating a lot amount of high CBD now for the last month, just like over 1,000 milligrams a day. And it's actually making me feel pretty good.
That's part of the cannabis education, you know, the Collagen Network try to provide, is that being present and aware of your own body, right? It's not going to hit you like a steamroller in certain applications of cannabis medicine. You actually have to observe and pay attention. But sometimes when you're observing and present in your body and looking, you notice miraculous effects that can you just miss because you feel good, you're doing something else, and you don't notice that you didn't have that same pain that would have been there because it didn't occur. And that's why a lot of people who are really trying to deal with chronic issues, the number one thing I recommend is that they're journaling their incidents, right? How many incidents are you having? How intense are they? So that you can look back and look at it, you know, with an impartial view of seeing exactly what was occurring, because we distort things in our mind. We get busy, we're going off. And when we feel good, sometimes we just don't notice. So then we quit on the treatments, or we don't continue as maybe a supplement that really benefited our lives. And then all of a sudden the pain's back, you know, because we're not just being present and observing and treating it like the medicine it is, that it needs to be maintained, and there's some work in there. But when you can really approach it that way, observe your body, be present, journal and log the incidents so you can see what is and isn't working, you can really dial in a system that can have huge benefits on quality of life. But it is a proactive approach as opposed to a lot of our experience with cannabis, which is more reactive and immediate.
Well, I noticed from taking a half a teaspoon of CBD a day that I've been doing that for the past 4 or 5 months now. And one of the things I've noticed over a period of time of doing it is a tremendous feeling of well-being that I find in my body that I didn't have before. And I just feel, I wake up in the morning and I feel well-being, and I get up and I've got energy, and my 3 titanium cages in my back aren't hurting me, and my frozen sciatic nerve from the titanium cages isn't bothering me, and I have this feeling of well-being. And so I gravitate. I eat a half a spoon of it every single day because it leaves me with that feeling of well-being. I guess you could call that a high if you want to look at it a certain way. I know that Sam doesn't feel like you get high off CBD, but the feeling of well-being is, it goes back to my original statement. It's hard to feel bad when you're feeling good. And so
I would love to share a funny story on myself about how I learned this thing we're talking about, the effect of high CBD dosing. And it has to do with tinctures, Subcool. We were making from ACDC, a tincture that was really high in CBD, not much THC at all. And we'd gotten it to where we had 350 milligrams of CBD in a little half fluid ounce bottle like this. This is an example of it. I don't know if you can make it out, but yeah. Anyway, early version of it, the top wasn't very good, and I had one in my pocket. And I was sitting on a bench outside, and long story short, the top of the bottle came off and it poured out on the bench. And I'd put a lot of effort into making that tincture and having it, and I was really wanting to. It was a tragedy to me that it had fallen on the bench, and I got down on my hands and knees and licked it all up off the bench.
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you what,
All right.
I couldn't go to sleep that night. It was amazing. Within about an hour, like, I have used my body pretty hard in my life. I don't have any serious conditions really other than glaucoma, which is what brought me to cannabis in the first place. But yeah, I felt better. I could not sleep that night, Subcool. You said something like that earlier, and that's what made me think of this story. I couldn't sleep, but I had a great night. I caught up on some reading I'd been wanting to do. The next day, I got up. I was ready to go. I had a great day. By that afternoon, I took a nap. Woke up that afternoon, took dinner, and went back to sleep. Slept all night, man. Was really sweet. Yeah. And ever since then, yeah, I've tried to keep some. I found actually that small doses of CBD still in the acid form, which is a little bit hard to do, but in a tincture, you can preserve them still in the acid form. And small dosing actually works pretty well for me. I'm taking probably 20, 25 milligrams a day over the course of the day, a few drops at a time of a tincture like that. And it really helps a lot with my general sense of well-being is how I think of it. It's more of a physical experience than a psychoactive one. I think there's really no psychoactive aspect to it other than how good it can feel to feel good.
Well, the feeling of well-being has to bleed back through your entire sensory network in your body in order for you to have it. So literally, that means your whole body is saying kudos to you. And that's how the sensation of feeling good comes on. And it's the same when you feel bad. When you feel bad, your entire body is telling you you're feeling bad. And hey, Sub, make yourself available, damn it, and I'll come and get you some breath. But anyway,
look. When I have my own home again, and people don't get yelled at for coming to my house, you can come stay with me if you would like to. Okay, and we'll get that shit fixed. I was going to show Mark. Did you see this on my feed? I thought this was pretty cool. So I'm a wound up guy, and I'm also the weed nerd. And I thought maybe, and I love ink. So I thought I would put my money where my mouth is this week. So one of my favorite terpenes is Mercium. So I had it tattooed on my hand, right on the hand that I trim weed with.
Nice.
But then when I was doing some research, and the thing we're talking about, man, cannabis terpenes are fucking amazing. And I'm going to say it wrong. One of you smart guys can help me. It's a carposyline, but it's the oil of cannabis. So I have it on my left hand. So
yeah,
put your
caryophyllene.
money where your fucking mouth is. Yep, caryophyllene.
Caryophyllene.
Yeah,
That was pretty cool.
that's cool, man.
Subcool.
Say it. Terps.
Caryophyllene. Caryophyllene. Say it.
Caryophyllene. Okay, got it. Caryophyllene.
There you go. You got it.
All right, now try beta caryophyllene.
And I got, just so you know, I got a cat. It's called California Piney. I found it online. I'm assuming it's orange.
All right. Look at that.
Terpene boy. It's great. It's great to bring up conversation. I love conversation. And so when I reach for somebody now, immediately they say, why does that tattooed on your hand? Bam. I'm
because I love terps. I need my shit to be loud. That's great.
Awesome.
Keep doing your thing, Sub. I love it.
Mark, can I ask you a couple questions about, because you're the man. So I've been pressing flowers, having a blast. I've just learned to change temperatures often, different strains. But I have, as I mentioned, I'm making a mountain of keef, and it's early keef so far. It's going to be late keef. So last night I did a pressing about 150 degrees. I had a blowout because I didn't position the bag right, and I actually ended up putting the whole blowout back in a bag and making something really nice. But what I wanted from you, when we're pressing super high quality keef, and I'm talking about keef when you put in a jar after a few minutes it becomes hash. Can you tell me? I see what you're holding. Can you tell me like what your temperatures and times? Would you mind sharing that with me? For sift, not bubble, but sift.
Right. Well, this was actually some sift that we. Oh no, this was bubble actually. Sift. It depends on how much moisture is present in it and how clean that you've gotten it, because that'll also affect the moisture. And so for me, I get asked constantly what my numbers are, but they change depending on what I'm running. So for sift, you know, if it was really sticky and kind of had a moisture content, then I might hit it as high as 200 degrees. And you know, if less moisture, I'll go for a longer time at a lower temperature, like 180 or something.
And pressure on hash, like with flowers, I go half a ton, and then a ton, and I pump it on my. But when you're pressing a little teeny packet of white sift that was just harvested a couple of days ago, this is a delicate thing. So can you kind of go over pressures? You're not smashing the shit out of it no more. Well,
you know what? That's why there's different ways. There's the electric generator that's not an air compressor. That's like $2,000 US. That's the butter. That's the best. Then there's the air compressor with the foot pedal. Then there is the hand pump, which is I like the hand pump in the M1. I've been using that a lot lately. So my unfortunate thing is that I don't have a pressure gauge between my pump and my M1 right now, but I can tell you from past, I've always hit around 80 PSI is what I have my compressor set at when I'm using a compressor. And I hit it, you know, I hit it pretty hard. I prefer getting the majority of my squish in one shot. So we did this one the other day, and it was over 90% of what there was to squish. And we did this at 200 degrees. And you can see it didn't affect the color by any means. It's very terpy. Smells amazing. This is Seedsman Haze. It just reeks like terpenoline. It's beautiful. Hey, what's going on, Josh and Kelly?
Hey, family, all good. Nice to see everyone today.
Nice to see you, Sub.
Hey guys, good to see you.
Nice. Just sitting on the porch?
Sitting on the porch, enjoying some daylight.
Yeah, we're getting some
yeah.
sunshine. We're hoping to get some sunshine on our face here in a moment. That'd be sweet.
It looks like it's going to be a sunny day here as well, but I have to get out, obviously. Maybe in the next couple of hours, I'll make my way out onto the Howe Sound for some of the last boating of the season as we fall into fall, which is awesome. I love fall in British Columbia, but I love winter a lot more. So fall is kind of this, like, it's shoulder season for us.
Yeah, it's wading through the mud until the snow falls.
We can relate to that.
Shoulder season. So how are things going in the Kootenays?
Really amazing. We've had a really tremendous year despite all of the smoke that we've had. We've had a really nice, dry, hot summer. So it's been really helpful for all of our crops. You know, we could have not done with the smoke. That was pretty awful, but we were thankful that we didn't have rain all summer like the past 3 summers.
And we didn't have ash falling off on all over all of our herb or anything. So that was nice. We have a lot of it in greenhouses, and we have gotten a few rainstorms, but pretty dry and sweet out. So yeah, a lot of flowers, amazing food. All of the food gardens have expressed themselves in ways that, you know, we haven't seen in a really long time. And the fruit trees, apple trees are overabundant. And yeah, we're making lots of food, saving it. We need to build another root cellar, basically.
Yeah, we're collecting all the food, but we don't have anywhere to put it right now.
We could definitely, I was hoping Tony would be here. I'd like to find out something about Puerto Rico, but
yeah, I'm wondering how they are actually, because they just got smashed so hard and haven't heard anything back. Same with Dr. William Courtney and his wife are in Dominica. And they also got hit pretty hard, and they haven't been in touch. So everyone's sort of hoping that all of, well, everyone on those Caribbean islands is okay. It's kind of a scary thing, having that rip through Irma and Jose.
Yeah, we're thinking about heading there. So we usually do disaster relief, and a lot of the organizations that we work with might be heading down. So as of yesterday, there's big conversations that we might be headed down with a group to go help women and children in this one. We'll find out in the next week.
Wow. Righteous work. I love that we're here.
Yeah, we figured we'd just be sandals on the ground helping out. You know what I mean?
Sandals on the ground. Sounds like your people there, Sam. Who's that guy wearing Birkenstocks? It's winter.
You know, it's you guys mentioned something earlier, though, if you don't mind me asking, kind of so there's going to be about, I don't know, a couple of 100 tons of, I think they're calling it Campfire OG is the joke. So this is cannabis that is smoke flavored, bacon flavored. And you know people are not going to throw it away. You know this is going to be part of the 2017 season is ash and smoke flavored cannabis. So is anybody seen any of this coming out yet?
It's for the patient sub.
Turn it into distillate. No flavor. Right? It's going to be the year of the distillate.
So when you work it, it won't have any flavor. That makes good sense. So you can just turn it into.
If it's distilled and the distillation was done properly and it's clean, it shouldn't have any flavor whatsoever, right?
I didn't think of that. And I don't know if you guys know, if you've been watching us here, we're not a typical harvest here. Mark, I think you would be really impressed. So we are harvesting some giant colas for market. Our garden is a charity garden. We have 4 families that we're going to give $2,500 to if we can get it to market. But I have a 6x6 gorilla tent with an air conditioner in it, and I have Mr. Bond flying out on the 3rd. We have 3 giant freezers, and we also have Frenchy cannoli coming out. So we're hashing the garden. I mean, we chop it, we put it in freezers, or we chop it and we put it in Frenchie's little spinny machiney thingy, because I want to see some temple balls out of my own garden. And I don't know if I'm sure people are doing it, but we're actively hashing like a 70 or 80 pound garden because I don't have anywhere to hang that much weed. I just want to turn it into hash. So I thought you'd like that.
I am absolutely in 100% full support of you hashing your garden. I'm in support of everyone hashing their gardens. I always grew my garden to hash it just because, well, it's the hash that I was looking for on the plant. So it seemed to be make the most sense to go right for it.
Hey, Sub?
Yeah.
After Frenchie comes there and makes a big mess at your place, I'll come and show you how to make cold sift without water and make temple balls without water that are about 10 times as nice and soft and good as anything Frenchie does.
Oh shit! Indra's throwing the glove down.
He just threw the glove down.
Frenchie's not even here to defend himself. I'll invite him in real quick. Hey, Frenchie, Indra's talking shit about you on. No, I'm just.
But wait. But I will kiss Frenchie on the lips, and I'm not kissing John on the lips. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
He's actually enough.
Mr. Frenchie, he will have tradition.
He is awesome. Look, just to have the fucker walking around my garden and ooh, these resins, oh shit, man, he is like the coolest guy I know when it comes to talking.
We'll call it Indra's balls versus Frenchie's balls. That's what the morbid florist just put in the chat room there. So we'll see who's got the nicest balls, because Sub's going to hit both of those balls.
Falls out, balls out.
And he'll let us know.
Somebody renamed them already Indra's cold balls, by the way.
Yes.
All right, you guys, I'm going to cut out. Thank you guys for letting me take over a minute and learn lots of stuff. You'll laugh, since you guys are talking about CBD. I don't happen to have any CBD. So I drove my ass to Sonoma Patient Group, and I'm going to go in here and get me some CBD. So I'll
do it, Sub. Hey, really quick, if you're gonna hash your whole garden like that with Frenchie, I hope you have a good worm farm start, because all that leaf matter is just the best worm food.
Yeah, I was talking to Bond last night about. How to properly lasagna I'm going to use this stuff called Earthshine on my 400-gallon pots, which dissolves the roots. So we're going to pile most of our bulk leaf cannabis, the stuff we can't sell to the cookie makers, on top of the pots, and then cover it with straw and let that act as like a kind of a compost thing to dissolve everything in those 400s over the season. So we're absolutely going to put as much carbon from the plant back into our garden as we can.
That's the way to go. You could probably throw some worms in there too over the winter, and they would come alive. I mean, they would stay alive and propagate in there.
Just break it down faster.
Add to it all.
I've got it. If you had guys that have been following me, so I became a worm farmer this year, and I learned that worm farming is as much work as cannabis. So I have these giant bins out back of my house that we worked every day for a long time, but then we got busy. So now I went down there the other day thinking that my worms were probably dead, and whoa, they're not. But what I have is 3 boxes of slime, which used to be eggs and garbage and stuff, and I have 1 million worms. So I figured I would put like a double handful in each pot before I put the hay down, and they'll be good to go. So it's kind of neat.
That's the way to go. Good job. I love it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Nice.
Hey, Subcool, make sure that you reach out. I'll be happy to get you some things and help you set up a good supplement regimen.
Foster, I really, really appreciate it, and I'll have Malik reach out right away. I know he's got your contact information.
He does.
Cool. This is Wade. I know you're running, but I wanted to let you know that over the last few years, some of the genetics that you've put out there have been good mother plants for crosses that we've been doing here in Nevada County. We're getting really lovely things. Thank you for putting that out there.
That makes my day. That makes my day.
I'd let you know.
Thanks, Subcool. Same here.
Thanks, guys. I love you guys. I love the cannabis community. I do not know what I would do without you people right now. Thank you and much love.
Did he say you people? I'm just joking. Love Sub.
You mean us peoples?
Us peoples. These are my peoples.
My people. The cannabis family.
Worst comes to worst, my peoples comes first. Little dilated people for you right there. Peace out, Sub. Thanks for coming in, bro.
Much love from the
Much
Canna
love.
fam.
Yeah. Always nice to have Sub stop in and share a little bit of his time. I mean, the guy is definitely busy when you know every time he comes in Sunday morning, he's in his car driving. Like, I got to go to the garden. Just going to harvest 120 pounds. All right. Well, that's good. Good to
I like
hear.
that it's making his own worms, and worm castings can be an issue because commercial worm farms often feed their worms with grains, and they don't have a proper way of vetting the grains to know that there's no glyphosate in there. And it's possible, and I bet if you test a lot of the worm castings commercial that are on the market, you'll find glyphosate and other residues in there. So what you feed the worms is absolutely crucial, and it's not just getting worm castings as being a really magic thing for your garden. So once again, knowing your inputs is huge, especially when you're making hash or doing any kind of concentrate. You really got to know what you put into the plant when you grew it.
That's why when I use my rabbit poo, I mix in 15% oak leaf mulch, because the worms love oak leaf mulch.
That's the beauty. I love that.
Yeah.
Llamas, alpacas, rabbits, like the best poop on earth.
And utilizing leaf material now that we're coming into fall is tremendous. You can think about a tree and what it uptakes from those deep roots. They're like amazing mineral miners. And if you utilize those leaves as your carbon source in your lasagna layering or in your worm farms, you're going to have a lot of minerals. And our big focus right now is raising our bricks readings and raising our refractometer so that we have higher mineral content in all of our foods, so it's more nutrient dense, as well as more nutrient dense ganja.
Yeah.
You know what? Rabbit poo is the best poo there is. It's better than the other ones that you mentioned. You can plant a seed in a turd right out of a rabbit's butt and it won't burn and it'll grow well. And so I use rabbit poo and rabbit poo tea extensively throughout the growing season. And if you look on my Instagram at my buds, they're thoroughly populated with trichomes everywhere. The buds are huge. I've got some 14-inch long tops that are 8 inches at the bottom where they start. I've had to prop the plant up numerous different ways, and they look like someone had sprinkled sugar all over them. And I didn't use any other chemicals or any other nonsense. I used rabbit poo, worms. I get the worms in the rabbit poo from the rabbit meat farm. It's got rabbit urine in it, and I use that. And I don't use any other stuff on it whatsoever. So I don't spray it. I don't put any bug stuff on it. I don't put any preventative mold or moisture things in place because it doesn't need it. When they've got the right amount of food, they fight for themselves and they do a magnificent job. You've got to give them what they want. They need food, they need attention, they need love. They reward you with the medicine. It's a simple paradigm.
What's your Instagram handle, Intra?
Say again?
What's your Instagram handle for those who want to check it out?
It's under Pure Extracts, John Davis on Instagram.
That sounds good. I was envisioning a rabbit poop clone puck.
Well, I tell you, it would make sense. Rabbit poo is the very best stuff. I've grown everything in it, and everything likes it. Nothing doesn't like rabbit poo, except for I wouldn't want to bathe in it or anything. But as far as all my plants go, my tomatoes.
That's a good idea to bathe in it, probably.
Yeah, it might actually be okay. Who knows? But it'll be a while before I give that a try, though. But as far as the plants go, I bathe them in it, and I do a lot of things that other people don't do. I don't believe in foliar feeding because I think foliar feeding, when you're spraying manure on plant leaves, is the primary cause of starting mold and other stuff to grow up in your leaf system. So I don't do that. Instead, during the season, I water my whole plant from the top down a few times and keeps everything off of it. And I just take good care of them, and I keep every 3 days I put rabbit poo tea in with them. And they just, it doesn't burn, and they just keep producing more and more trichomes. And by the way, my CBD plants are just eating that rabbit poo tea up like crazy. I've not seen CBD buds like I've seen on the 2 CBD plants I'm growing this year from feeding them the rabbit poo tea. So I don't know what all is in rabbit poo exactly, but I've been using it for 58 years.
It probably has a lot to do with what's getting fed to the rabbits. That's what you should be looking at.
You know, I bet you that rabbit poo is full of rabbit shit.
I knew you were going to say that, Tim.
Etienne knows stuff.
He does.
The other thing about rabbit poo as well is that the rabbits have an immaculate digestive system so that no seeds pass through their manure. So you can feed them almost anything, seeded plants, and then you're going to get a really high phosphorus in that manure. You know, whenever there's seeds or flower heads, then that's pulled out all of the phosphorus out of the soil. And, you know, the green plants are going to be working on your nitrogen. So you can actually feed your rabbits in conjunction with what's going on with your gardens, and you're not going to be transmitting any seeds into your gardens.
And here's a concept. In your whole garden, cover crop it, and then rabbit tractor it.
Yeah.
Rabbit tractor.
I use 50% rabbit poo. I use 30% really good soil that I mix up myself, but I mix it out of good things, not crap, no chemicals. And then I use a 10% oak leaf mulch, and I put in a little blood meal and a little bone meal, and I throw in a small handful of minerals. And the plants, I've never had a year when they didn't almost try to get out of hand size-wise. You know, the first time when we started growing them in the ground, we grew them up 5 feet tall, and then we stripped all the leaves off of it, covered it with root tone, and buried it in a 5-foot deep hole. And nothing happened for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then finally one day we went up and there was a 3-foot tall plant there. And then 4 or 5 days later, there was a 10-foot tall plant there. So changing that root, changing that part of the plant into a root was a big plus. And so then we started feeding more rabbit poo. And then I came across the idea of splitting the stalk in 4 and laying them down and just growing branches, not growing any more top or any more main stalk. And when you just grow branches, all of your buds look the same. If you grow 200 pounds, all 200 pounds look the same. And so that was an extremely good method. The plants respond well, and I put them in 600-gallon bags when I'm growing in a season, and half of that is the rabbit poo. And a lot of people are thinking, wow, you can't put that much fertilizer in. But, you know, I've been doing it for 56 years. Me and Annie grew it forever in Southern California, and we are complete and total Church of Rabbit Poo members.
Yeah, rabbit poo is fantastic. I think that rabbit manure is definitely one of the best things that you can utilize on your farm. You know, people in BC, we all dream about rabbit tractors, but we also have grizzly bears and
grizzly
black
bears love those damn things too.
They love to have a whole basket full of rabbits for sure.
But they are furry loving.
And the other thing about rabbit
they probably
manure,
add a lot of resin.
Yeah, the thing about rabbit manure and also sheep manure, because of their diet, is that a lot of people in France and people who are growing like lavender farms and they're utilizing it for distillate for perfumeries, is that they love sheep manure and rabbit manure because of the terpenes in it, and they believe that it does bring out terpenes in your plants.
Or you can use sheep's wool for mulch.
Yeah, and the rabbit manure is also already pre-digested enough that it doesn't have to recompost, so it doesn't get hot. So that's why it's such a fantastic addition into your pots or into your soil layering.
Where I learned about it exactly was I was extracting lavender for Robertae for 7 years in our plant in Kansas. And their main scientist, Dr. Daniel Julian, flew over on a jet to come see our factory when we got it built up in Kansas. And he related the story of how they use rabbit poo with the lavender. And up till then,
bring out the oils?
To bring out the oils, yeah. Well, I managed to get into Robertae's supply line by bugging them for 2 years about extracting some lavender, and they wouldn't ever pay attention to me. Finally, to get rid of me, they sent me a package of 3-year-old lavender flowers and said, okay, when you can extract this and we like it, we'll call you. Otherwise, you know, you don't call back anymore, okay? So I extracted it, and 4 days later, I got this crazy French guy on the phone trying to speak English and French mixed up at the same time, telling me it was the best lavender extract he ever saw in his life, and they wanted to know how in the world I did it. So a lifelong relationship with Dr. Julian, a 20-year-long relationship with him, figured big time into what I know about flavor and fragrance extracting and oils. And so I got to work with him for a very long time, and I can tell you that there's a lot more to the rabbit poo than we really even know about. At Roberte, they studied it for a long time. And whatever it is that the rabbits, what you call an immaculate diet, is usually alfalfa and stuff like that.
Sometimes, unfortunately, glyphosate too.
Yeah, well, it hasn't been showing up yet, but maybe it shows up in everything.
No, it shows up in rabbit dung, and there's been studies that have been done on it. So this is actually, one of the concerns about using it is, again, rabbits will eat just about anything foliar, and glyphosate does pass through their system.
Well, it's too late, Mark, because they've already found that same crap in mother's breast milk. So it's a little late to be worrying about what rabbit poo does at this point in time.
No, I'm just saying that glyphosate, it's unfortunately has, so people have studied glyphosate in rabbit poo, but they've studied glyphosate in animals. So, just bringing that up.
And the number one diet of commercial rabbits is often alfalfa pellets, and alfalfa pellets are being tremendously sprayed by glyphosate as well as GMO crops. So we have to be careful.
Knowing your inputs is
crucial.
crucial. That's all it is. That's all.
But
it is.
it really is easy to raise your own rabbits, because you can actually take a small little rabbit tractor right along your lawn. If you only even have a small lawn, and you can create a tremendous amount of rabbit manure in a really small space.
Believe it or not, there's a lot of totally organic rabbit meat farms around and that are springing up that only feed their rabbits the stuff that they grow that is organic. I've been using some of them for years, and some of them, you go to them and the way they take care of the rabbits is heartwarming, And so I don't recommend anything commercial, because everything that's been commercialized, unfortunately, at this point in time has been left me wanting for the most part. I don't use any chemicals or stuff in any of the plants that I grow. And really, I've been extracting for a long time, and the fact that insecticides and sulfur compounds and microbutanol and other stuff started showing up in the plants is a very disturbing trend. We're trying to defeat it by putting filtration systems in our system that gets rid of it. But I wish everybody out there would stop with the spraying of bug spray and powdery mildew spray and stuff on the plants, because people have to ingest this stuff. And you guys want to make $1, but if you're going to make $1 and cause more discomfort and more upset, I think you should try to find something else to do with your time.
Yeah, please. And don't call it medicine.
Ooh, yeah, please.
You read the recent report by Steep Hill, where they're talking about 86% of all the clones tested were contaminated with pesticides or fungicides.
Just saw that. That's crazy. We have an IPFM. We call it an integrated pest and fungal management program that we put out to the community. Anyone that asks us about it, and predator mites and predators are so darn easy to use. That's not really something you use in a cloning situation as much.
But we're starting to feel like, the only clean clones out there are the ones that actually come with predators.
We've had to destroy 53% of our extract and donate extract from organic farms this year for microbutanol. And a lot of those come with flower tests that show clean. And as soon as we take that and extract it, all of a sudden it starts popping, and it's been a real problem. And a lot of people get upset because we share those results back to them. But I nothing I can do about that. But one of the good things is it's caused people to really question their clone sources and the nursery practices a little more. So I'm hoping this isn't as big a problem as it is the last couple years in the future, but there's products. We make a nasal spray for kids with epilepsy that really needs a high THC, low other compounds sort of profile, and we haven't been able to get one to test. The high THC gardens are just failing left and right. We haven't been able to get one to pass in a couple months.
So
This is
high THC that is extract it first, so it's THCA. Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah. So basically, with the nasal spray, we want the highest THC ratio we can because we want to use as little cannabis oil as possible. This we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but it has to do with the viscosity and being able to aerosolize. And the lower the percentage, the more oil you have to put in, which ends up making it thicker. So it's just that's kind of the thought behind it.
Okay, well, I can supply you with some of that, and plus, I have a process that I use that I've developed to take very thick cannabis oil and make it very motile, very mixable.
Well, I need to drive up, and we need to visit here soon. It sounds like.
Yeah.
Also, one thing that I wanted to mention here is that was the reason why us and a lot of other community members created the peer certification. It goes beyond OMRI, it goes beyond NOP. So to be able to find flowers of people that have a peer certification, it means that they're only growing off of a closed loop system. So all of the clones are made there on their property. All of the seeds are made there on their property. All of the inputs are all what they have created on their own property to keep it totally closed loop. And
or knowing their inputs that come from off of their property and working together as a community and working together to keep the medicine clean and knowing our sources. So within the pure purification community, everyone's communicating with each other on how to create the cleanest medicine for the masses, for the medicine.
And everybody's flowers and concentrates are coming up totally pure, which is really helpful. So it's a way that the community can help one another and sort of step outside of the current organic standards that are going on right now.
And consumers.
That's obviously needed. The other thing that's needed is we need to take each one of these compounds, both pesticides and fungicides, and spray a mother plant, grow it big, test it. If it comes out contaminated, make clones from it as a big mother plant before we flower it. Test the clones. If those are contaminated, clones those clones. Test it until we can find out how many generations does it really take to get rid of these goddamn things. And it's a warning for growers. If people realize this, they're much less likely to have anything to do with them in any way.
And it's really powerful. It's powerful because you're not making $1. And like Indra was saying, I believe it's, people are like, I'm going to tweak this out and make $1 when you end up losing $1 and making people sick. So it's a really powerful wake-up call for recreational farms to not become WRECK, recreational.
Well, people don't understand.
I think in the past,
they're very insidious.
I think in the
house today, and then not spraying it again for 3 years. And 3 years down the road, take a sample of the soil in your greenhouse, and it'll still be severely contaminated with the spray from 3 years ago.
But that depends on what the spray is. All soil doesn't become contaminated forever. Both ultraviolet light and just soil microorganisms can disperse and destroy some of these chemicals.
And that's real. And we're working with some farms that did use pesticides and some chemical fertilizers in the past, and they have been using Korean natural farming and also just
micro remediation,
closed loop systems. Part of the reason that another aspect of closed loop systems that work is the part of having a closed loop is that you're digesting organic material, and you're doing that with microorganisms that excuse me, that clean the land and transform those terrible compounds. So I don't know if we would ever know exactly how long it takes. We know that they're very vigorous compounds to get rid of, but so are some of the remediating compounds. So we're getting some soil tests back that are showing clean after 1 year.
No, 2.5.
2.5 years.
2.5 years.
So we're showing some promise on that, and we're looking
but we're
deeper.
using pretty serious micro remediation with it.
And I think not that many people grow in the ground, to be honest. I mean, it's what I prefer. But what I'm interested in is showing the mother clones. Once you've sprayed them, you know, are they really safe to use that year? Are they really safe to make clones for the next year's crop, et cetera, et cetera? And that wouldn't be that hard to do the science with it, but it hasn't been done yet.
You'd be contaminating your land, so I know for me, I would be like, oh shit, I'd have to. Like,
it can be done indoors under lights. I mean,
right? Yeah, yeah.
Probably be a good idea for someone to get on it eventually. You know, how far does it pass? It's kind of a frightening thought.
Well, what's true is that
a lot of
people who are
clones out
selling this stuff should have to pay for the testing of it. They should have I mean, from my point of view, the pharmaceutical companies and the chemical companies that make fungicides and pesticides are running an ongoing science experiment on humans and our environment. And I think that one of the things that cannabis can do for us as a culture is help us understand that all these compounds we're putting into our environment, putting into our bodies, putting on the plants that we eat, giving to the animals that we eat, we are the guinea pigs in a giant experiment. Is my point of view.
I personally agree with you, but
yes.
That said, the majority of Americans eat chemically grown food and GMO corn, GMO everything else. That's just the way it is, and I hate to put such a burden on cannabis.
Agree. I think the guinea pigs are probably insulted by that. Don't you think?
Well, I'm not saying that we are all pigs. We are all animals.
No. I'm poking fun at the euphemism guinea pig. That's all.
Yeah. Well, I just want to. It's a point of view about what's going on. The early organic chemists who first worked out that petroleum could be used to make fertilizer, for example, or weapons, recognized that their lab assistants were coming subject to all kinds of cancers. And they decided that it wasn't really going to be that big a problem because medicine would solve the problem by the time it became an issue in the population. And from my point of view, it's still going on that way. We're really putting all these compounds out there like glyphosate because it has some properties about being able to kill plants as if that's a benefit. And cannabis, I think, is the conversation that we're having that I think is really important is that if you really want medicinal cannabis that you can assure the people that you're providing it to is clean and free of issues, you really have to follow these practices of sourcing everything from your own work, if you will, your own place. I feel very fortunate to have a piece of land where I've got enough space to have begun the process that the folks at Dragonfly Farms are exemplifying so beautifully. I think the mushrooms play a part in it, but a really huge thing is sourcing the inputs that you're using in all these various processes. Yes, sir.
Wade, don't you find that every large grower has gotten clones from somebody else?
I get clones from other people, but they're always suspect. I have to recognize that the plants that I work with, if I haven't bred them and gotten them here myself, or I'm working with someone that I can trust the cuttings they're providing are clean, that plant, if it's not my plant, I don't know that. But yet in this work that I've been doing for years, one of the things that's happened is people have gifted me examples of things that they've found that might be of benefit. And more than a few times, though, it turned out they were of benefit. And it's part of why I feel so interested in how different cultivars respond to the circumstances that I'm able to give them. And I've tried to refine the circumstances, if you will. Again,
that's one of the reasons I'm interested in how many generations can you clone a mother plant. and then a clone of the clone and a clone of the clone before there is no parts per trillion, parts per billion, and it's truly cleaned up again.
I think that would be a great thing to do, and I think it would be even more interesting to try different soil recipes in on that and different foliar recipes, and just to see what different techniques you could use to speed up that process, because I do believe that it would be different based off whatever environment you were using. I mean, it could be environmental
And possibly
too.
even
I mean,
strain as well.
yeah, I mean, I bet I
Yes.
wonder if the hazes or some of the land races would get through it faster because their genetics are closer to the earth, and maybe the hybrids would hang on to it more. That's just made up in my mind. I have no idea, but yeah.
Or-
Also, maybe like viruses, if you took just the very, very top atypical mirror tips, maybe they wouldn't have the contaminants or viruses in them yet, and then reproduce them by in vitro.
Yeah,
What happens if you plant corn, or take the corn that you can buy now, corn seed, and go out and plant it, and don't spray it, and don't put glyphosate on it, and don't do any of the petrochemical stuff you have to do, and just watch it grow on its own in the wild? What do you think you get?
a smaller corn plant.
Very much smaller, and probably not a survivable plant. So the idea that we could put enough poison in our food to fend off other stuff is a little bit insane. It's like putting all of us on chemotherapy, and it's making a kind of a crazy assumption, which it doesn't make sense. I know the world needs food, but there's been many studies showing that organically grown food can be grown on a large enough scale to provide the food without the petrochemical thing. All of the plants that rely on petrochemicals, if you try to grow them on their own without anything except rain, fail dismally. And so we're like one season away from starving to death. And people don't realize it. I mean, what happens if the petrochemicals aren't available one year, all of a sudden? And then now you're looking at all the crops putting out next to nothing or dying off. And I think it's a dangerous spot we put ourselves in. Instead, we should be making our plant stock strong, healthy, organic, able to put up with things without petrochemicals.
That is available. All you have to do is use heirloom varieties and join groups like the Seed Savers Exchange.
Well, I do.
And they pass around heirloom varieties worldwide.
That's what's up.
I buy all the time. I buy the seeds in the little seed vault thing so that I have them in case of a zombie apocalypse. I have all the dried organic food and stuff in case of a zombie apocalypse. But still, all in all, the people who produce the majority of the food are not doing that. They're using petrochemicals. And that's the problem. A lot of the stuff that we've got going on in our bodies is a result of these petrochemicals being in our food. It's okay. They don't want you to smoke anything that might have insecticide on it, but here's a tomato that is so loaded with chemicals that bugs try to eat it and die and fall off on the ground.
Hey, John.
So,
including your intestinal flora.
including your intestinal flora. Yeah, Mark.
Butane. Okay, I just want to let you know.
What?
Butane is a petrochemical, and just to be accurate, we don't use petrochemicals as crop protection agents. You know, fungicides, insecticides are not petrochemical. They might be petrochemical based, but that's really, sort of irrelevant, really.
Well, it's not irrelevant when you're putting it on the food, Mark. How can you say that?
No. Okay, so things like
chemicals are used in the generation of these chemical things. Man,
no, but I'm just saying, just to be accurate, petrochemicals are chemicals that derive petroleum, and all of us rely on infrastructure and airplanes and automobiles and trains that all need petrochemicals to push things through the sky and through over the ocean. And yeah, it sucks that we burn a lot of petrochemicals and we burn a lot of gasoline, but all that organic food still uses a lot of petrochemicals in all the refrigeration required for it, and all the impact that society, I mean, let's face it, we're addicted to oil, and part of it is, yeah, I mean, I'm not like, you know, saying that this is how it has to be forever, but as long as there's cheap oil, the reason why, you know, a head of lettuce costs, you know, $1.99 at the grocery store is because they're able to produce it cheaply, and you know, that's what the working family could afford. They can't afford an $8 head of lettuce at the store. I'm not saying that organic is going to be, you know, $8 a head, but the point is that you're right. The controls now that prepare food,
and even beyond
very,
that,
very
Mark,
large quantities, use these chemicals, use micro mill, use all the chemicals that are out there. And the reason why we have an environmental protection agency was to register the active ingredients for those uses. And again, we've been stymied by the current administration because the current director of the EPA will not allow even companies to approach them with a registration for use on cannabis. So again, cannabis is kind of left in the dark because they're not going to regulate, just saying that, oh, it's federally illegal, and none of these companies, again, can basically make a product with any claims on it or register it. And when you get it registered, the, you know, thing about that is typically with the EPA is that you have to show both safety and efficacy. So you have to show that for the intended market, like if you're, you know, intending this to be sprayed on food or whatever, that it is safe and everything. And so you're, or, I mean, all of these things, what makes a crop protection chemical today is one that breaks down and is very, very safe and is a very, very safe profile, but it's very effective at controlling the cornworm or whatever they're applying it to be used for. And yeah, this is large.
Sort of the opposite of a systemic.
But yeah, I mean, kind of opposite of systemic, because a systemic, what they're using now is active on like grams per acre as opposed to kilograms per acre, which were the large broadcasted DDT and things where they were just spraying entire fields. Now they can reduce the amount that they're spraying, but now what they're finding, again, with some of these new things like the neonics, for example, is it's having deleterious impact on off-target insects like the bees, right? So everyone knows about colony collapse disorder. I mean, this is one of the things that, again, is problematic with the use of things like imidacloprid, which has a really human safety thing, which is what the manufacturers were concerned about. Ooh, if we spray this on produce, are people going to get cancer? Are people going to crawl over and die? Turns out people aren't at the use rates that they're using it, because it's very effective at low use rates. But now, after it's been used for 10, 20, 15 years, they're finding now this off-target, just like with glyphosate. With glyphosate, the target enzyme in glyphosate is something called EPSP synthase, which has to do with the shikimate pathway to make aromatic amino acids. And so it completely inhibits that. And yeah, that doesn't have an impact on mammals and humans or mammals. But what it does have an impact on is the gut bacteria that's in our gut and in the gut of other animals. And so like when these rabbits are foraging, and they're foraging in fields that maybe weren't sprayed directly with glyphosate, but maybe it was sprayed downstream from where, you know, there was either drift or erosion, and, you know, there could be, again, persistence of glyphosate in the environment. But most ag chemicals today will microbially and physically degrade in the environment by the time that produce makes it to market, and there's no residuals, or whatever residuals on the produce. They've done tests to show that human exposure at those levels, even chronic exposure, is not problematic. But none of this has been done with cannabis. And so, as you know, cannabis, unlike produce, is not washed. And so at least most of us don't wash cannabis. I know Mark and all the hash makers, oh, no, dude, we wash. No, but the point is that you don't normally wash cannabis, but anything that is hydrocarbon-like is the best way to describe it, Indra. So it's not petrochemicals, but most of these active ingredients that are in the crop protection chemicals today are very fat soluble, will stick to the trichome, and will end up concentrating in any concentration process. And so you may not see it in the flower, like Forrest was saying. When they tested flour, it came back clean, but lo and behold, we test the concentrate, and now it's coming up because you're concentrating it. So the last point I'll make is, this goes back to the smoky comment earlier that Subcool was making, which is, if you distill it, and if the distillation is done in the right way, theoretically, you could remove the cannabinoids from anything that's left behind, including pesticide residuals or smoky tasting residuals. So this will be the year of the distillate, I think, just because of all the fires that are happening out west. I think you'll see a lot of, I know just from my phone's been ringing off the hook, a lot of interest in making distillates this year, it seems like.
And you guaranteed, if there's that many people making distillate, there's going to be some smoky distillate in the in some of these pens.
Yeah, well, it'd be really interesting to try to identify what those smoky compounds are, because actually some of the smoky compounds are actually plant growth regulators. Exactly. In that the essence of what the forest released when it does burn actually initiates new seed germination. So some of those compounds have actually been explored as plant growth regulators and things that upregulate things for seed germination to happen.
And also, you know, discussing what you were just talking about with organic food, you know, if you bring a refractometer into a health food store and you're, you know, testing the ratings on a lot of these foods, they really actually have zero nutrients. You know, a lot of these organic foods that are even local in our area that we feel like are really healthy and good for us are coming up really low on the refractometer. You know, the idea of nutrient dense food is starting to become a thing of the past, unless we really take a hold of this and start adding and re-adding minerals into our soil.
You can take a little garlic press to the store or to your cannabis farms or to the place where you're getting your alfalfa and just press a drip out onto the refractometer and make that decision on where you're going to get your alfalfa from, or your chard, or your carrots, or whatever you're doing. It's one way of testing it.
And even just with us here out on our farm, you know, we feel like we have an amazing soil. We have all closed loop systems. Everything that we put into our farm is from our farm here. And, you know, when we first started here 10 years ago, our vegetables and fruits were very low. And now, over time, by adding a lot of minerals into the soil, adding more and more leaf material, you know, oak leaf, maple leaf, these kinds of things, that our nutrient density is raising up a lot higher in our food. So the idea of just organic doesn't really mean anything. Unfortunately, also organic means that it has a tremendous amount of blood and bone meal in that. You know, you talk to organic farmers and their number one and number two ingredients that they're adding into their soil is blood and bone meal. And when you test that blood and bone meal, it may be registered for organic use, but it isn't organic. And that's a loophole that people are continuously using in the cannabis industry and also in the organic food industry.
And we would also like to say we do use plastic for our greenhouse, but other than that, we have no other inputs coming in, and we're growing amazing food. I mean, we're just using, you don't have to go for petrochemicals or nothing. You can,
or hydrochemicals.
We're just taking the weeds that we're weeding out of our garden and putting them into water, liquefying them and watering them back into the earth. And we have the biggest plants in the world. And
well,
I'm just saying they're big. That's all. And we have amazing food and potatoes. And I can't wait to harvest our squash patch because it's like phenomenal, amazing. And it's possible, and it can be done on large scales. And organic isn't necessarily the answer. And as a community, we really need to challenge ourselves to to do more in order to
Go
save.
further. What about closed loop vegetables and fruits? You know, so that we know that the people are remineralizing by utilizing what they're taking off of their farms.
Man, I'll tell you, we've done this earthen pretty good. We got to figure some shit out here in the next couple of generations because
It's really crucial.
It's actually really simple. It's called give more than you take.
There it is. Give more than you take.
Beautiful, Sam. That's exactly what it is. I feel like, you know, even organic farming is that they're taking a lot, and even farms that may be utilizing, you know, maybe their cover crop or whatever, but they're still growing it out of the same soil so that those cover crops can only uptake what's in the soil already. So if we're not giving back to the soil and continuously taking from it, it's just not going to be helpful.
Well, cover crops are good at fixing nitrogen too from the air.
But like you said earlier, Sam, that takes a few years to really kick in.
Yep, no, that's absolutely true. Because I've been an organic biodynamic farmer for since 1972, and yeah, it takes time to build up really, really nice soil.
It's work worth doing. Here in California, there's actually funding for farmers to build soil content, and what they're really talking about is the same sort of thing we're talking about, is trying to add organic content to the soil. Of course, if you're a cannabis farmer, they're not willing to talk to you, but yeah. And I got to sign off here pretty soon, but I wanted to say thank you, Marcus, for what's happening here. And Forrest, I'd like to go with you to see Indra. And Zendra, I'd like to look forward to meeting you.
That sounds like a fun road trip. Needs to
Doesn't
happen.
it? Yeah, yeah. So anyway, much love, much respect. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, all of you, for this information and the work you guys are doing. I learn something here every day. It blows me away. Thank you. Ciao.
Thanks for coming out, Wade. Thanks for coming out and spending some time with us. We do appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, Wade. We really appreciate everything that you're doing. And, you know, we sent you an email last week, so I don't know if you got that, but
I will look for it. And if I haven't found it, if you don't hear from me in a few days, please bounce with me another one.
Yeah, basically, we just want to know how we can support you in Forest. That's really the base of it, and how we can continue your gardens, and then in turn helping to support Forest and what he's doing. We're 100% behind you guys, and whatever we can do, we're in.
Well, that sounds like another trip that needs to happen.
Yeah. Cheers. Ciao.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, come on up to Canada, Forrest. I'll be there for that trip.
Oh, it's happening. It's going to happen the next year.
Nice.
Yeah. Amazing.
Cladrius Network World Tour. Look out.
Of course. Well, you know, Canada has a federal program, so you could get into some pretty good spots, I think, to get that information out.
Yeah, I've been looking at a few events, and we'll talk about this another time. But yeah, we're going to time it right, maybe for next summer when there's some things going on, and help the cause, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much information out there these days that people actually have a hard time finding the good information.
Yeah.
So this is, if you can imagine, a problem. It's why it's good to push that good information up to the top every time you find it, get it out there. So it makes it a little bit easier for people to find. I'm so deep into this. To me, it doesn't seem that hard to find at all. But I know so many of the histories and so many of the backgrounds of where the information's coming from that is also very helpful to know what the quality of the information that you're getting is. So
I think once you have a good foundational understanding, you're able to sift through things more quickly. You know, and you don't waste a lot of time on bad, papers and articles and info. But it's getting people up to that level where they can just be competent enough to be able to sift through some of the nonsense that is the negative part of the wonderful thing we call the internet and free information,
which is even doing research on the sites that are releasing that information in the first place. Like there's definitely like, you know, is it a trusted source of information, or is it one of these sort of just like people fishing for traction, just not necessarily sharing truths?
So we had one question that got posted a few times. I don't know, Mark, if you want to talk about it here on the side chat, because they asked a few times about cancer and preventative cannabis use. You see that?
Yeah,
there?
I mean,
What they were asking for was research, reference articles that dealt with that issue, and I think some of the better ones are coming out of Spain.
Well, for those who can't read the question is there evidence for cannabis as a preventative medicine against cancer?
Yes. Yes. The answer is yes. Unequivocally, yes. In fact, the U.S. patent on cannabis proves it, right? So it does have neuroprotective activity in that it's a fat-soluble antioxidant, so it deposits into fatty tissue like the brain, and it quenches free radicals. Free radicals form mutations that lead into cancer. So yes, yeah, absolutely. It does so in the pancreas and does so in the liver as well. The other thing that it does in the liver, we were talking about CBD before. One of the things that how CBD works, is it lowers the metabolic activity of metabolic degradation of other components in the liver. So it basically inhibits what's called cytochrome P450 and related oxidase enzymes in the liver that basically start creating all kinds of things in the body. So part of the activity that CBD has, it basically lowers the degradation of what's already in your blood.
A good example of that is with THC. You take CBD and THC together, and it makes the combo last longer, the effects.
Right, exactly, for that reason.
Yep, exactly.
Well, and I think that, you know, although there's not papers on this, that what we know about how cannabinoids interact with the CB2 receptor, how they trigger apoptosis and other cell death cycles, you know, cancer is happening in our bodies all the time, and our bodies are fighting them. So, you know, supplements of these cannabinoids, although I don't have a reference paper to point you to, logic would suggest
I do.
Wonderful. I'd love to see it. But, you know, it would suggest that, you know, any assistance you can have in triggering that system in cancer cells in the body is going to be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's also anti-angiogenic. So, you know, the way that tumors survive is in the what's called extracellular matrix. They emit growth factor, and the growth factor stimulates blood cell or blood vessel formation from an existing artery or existing vein or capillary to basically sprout a new artery or vein to the tumor itself. And so if you could inhibit the tumor's ability to reroute vascular plumbing to feed itself, it's one way of choking tumors. So it's also an anti-proliferative. So they've also shown, and this is primarily work by Manuel Guzman in Spain, who was probably, Sam, arguably the lead researcher in terms of cannabinoids and their impact on cancer, and actually looking to see molecular mechanisms and fundamental markers that show the impact that cannabinoids have on tumors. And you know, anecdotally, you go to the internet and you'll see, Rick Simpson oil, you put it on a tumor, you keep putting it on, eventually it goes away. So there is something about this that, you know, cannabinoids do have, basically make cancer go away. Is it a cure for cancer? Maybe not. It has to be defined, I think, more in the terms that medical science can actually see it in terms of dosing and understanding what the appropriate medicine in terms of form and delivery is a very, very key thing. I think that I've said this before many times on church. I think the U.S. pharmaceutical industry has got the world believing that whatever it is, there's a pill for it. And so to me, it's like you have to get beyond that paradigm of something that you're going to eat, that you're going to ingest, that's going to go down into your stomach, that's going to dissolve and have some miraculous effect on your health. You know, if your cancer is here, you put the medicine here on your arm, if that's where it is. So again, localized delivery is really, really important, because cannabinoids, as we know, are not very water soluble, so they have to be delivered in such a way that they can get to where they're, you know, basically going to be effective.
You know, I hear people, some of the people who come and ask for help, they're saying, well, we're thinking about cannabis, but the type of cancer that we have doesn't really respond well to chemotherapy, our doctor said. But they said they might have these new drugs that help block the blood flow to the cells, and they actually cause them to die by some word. They trigger the cell death. I was like, well, that's exactly what we do know, and we're still learning new things it does. But what things we're certain about, that's what cannabis does. It blocks blood flow, so it slows the duplication of these rapidly duplicating cells, and it causes them to have a lifespan and kind of takes away their immortality. And that's essentially what cancer is this rapid duplicating, non-dying cell until it kills you. And it's great to see that people are starting to understand that a little better, but it's kind of sad when, you know, they're not being encouraged to at least try it as a benefit, you know, not necessarily a cure, but something that could be beneficial, and told to hold off for this pharmaceutical drug that they're trying to design that does the exact same thing, maybe.
The other thing that I wanted to mention too is the fact that cannabis is an adaptogenic, you know, along with a lot of other plants in you know, the plant kingdom, as well as a lot in mycology. You know, mushrooms are also an adaptogenic. So the cannabis decides, you know, a lot of times when people utilize it with our immune systems, with our own intelligence and our own bodily intelligence, it really decides on how it's going to help and heal us. And along with that adaptogenic in our body, it also becomes an adaptogenic to our minds. I believe that cannabis helps us make better decisions because it is an adaptogenic. It makes us more adaptable beings on the planet as well, which I think, you know, it's giving us a higher intelligence along with the other adaptogenic mushrooms and, you know, vegetation that's given directly by Mother Nature.
So you really got to just feed your immune system. I mean, number one, and it's all the things we can do. Just how many can we find that are immune boosting? You know, that's along with the cannabinoids.
And like allying with these adaptogenic things that Mother Nature has given to us.
And don't you think there's a connection to music? Because I'm a musician. I've played music, I think, just about the same time as I've been getting high. So I've been getting high just as long as I've been playing music. So for me, the two things are very connected. And what I get from one, I put into the other. I feel that like my spirituality and my ability to reach to other people has to do with both the plant, but both music too. So to me, it's like there's this universe that's been created that creates, you know, like when I express myself in my music, I'm doing so because my cannabinoid receptors are firing and I'm John Coltraneing and I'm trying to let it come out, man. I'm doing my best Garcia. I'm just like letting it go, man. And then when I look out in the audience and I see like this dude just totally like doing his thing too. So he just took a hit of some weed and he's getting into it too. So it's like, to me, I'm connecting with this guy, right? I don't even know this dude, right? But we're connecting, and for that moment, like we're on a different level of spirituality. It's like, I think it's like, yeah, it's like I always tell people it got us drawn on the walls of the cave, and what got, you know, musicians, I think, especially jazz musicians, when they realize that maybe, I mean, the stress of life and the stress of the world's around them, they could just, you know, get nice, and then all of a sudden it just comes out in triple bars and comes out in cheats because they're able to kind of de-stress themselves to bring things down to where their creativity just overflows into that other space that may not have been there if you didn't consume, you know? I don't know, maybe it's just me.
It's healing through music. It's healing.
Yeah,
through
and when you stimulate your immune system, you're going to stimulate all of those happy receptors as well. And that's why I just can't see, you know, in separating recreational from medicinal. It's the same thing.
De-stressing, I mean.
Last night we did a little bit of a test trial. We had a gathering with our community. We live in a really small community, and we handed out probably over 30 joints to everybody. And I'll tell you, it was the best party that we have had in a really long time. It was just like a lot of people who might not normally smoke, or people who, might be smoking something that's not so great. I mean, really, everybody was hugging one another last night, and it was like an ability to come together through cannabis.
People love free joints.
That makes them happy too.
We got ours.
Yeah, those are nice joints too. Those are like fatés. That's what I would say those were. So yeah, that's nice. It's good.
Those are Canadian joints. So wouldn't they be fat A's?
Yeah, fat A's. Well played, Etienne.
Hey guys,
well
it's about
played.
time. My time has come to an end. I've got appointments starting at noon, so I just want to thank you for having me on again, and I will see you guys next time.
Yes, thanks for coming out, Forrest. In fact, the entire show is coming to a close here, so I want to thank everyone for coming out. As always, it was great discussion, good conversation into our third year here on Hash Church, and we will see you all next week. So thanks for coming out, everybody. Peace out.
Bye, Mark.
Bye, everybody.